Good evening. I apologize for the delay. We were hoping to have a fourth member, and who's been ill, but she's getting ready and coming in, so we'll have that. And to move along a little bit, there are some smaller items that we can take care of that don't require a vote. And so we can handle that until we get Ms. Leibowitz here. We can operate with a three-person board. However,
we can't hear anything you're saying. Speaker system's not working.
any better?
Yeah, that sounds better.
Okay, I'll get as close as I can. So we have three is a quorum. However, to take action on anything, we need three votes. So it doesn't leave much room for dissent. And so to move along, we'll take care of things that don't need a vote, and then we can get to the public hearing. The first one is the one on the proposed alcoholic beverages. And so once we get our fourth member here, we'll get started on that and go. So the first thing is the roll call, and seated at the moment are Gunn as acting chairman, Hultgren, an alternate, and Sienna, a regular member, along with the town planner and the town engineer. First thing we can handle are the minutes of the meeting of December 4th. Any corrections or omissions?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Try it again closer.
Lean into the mic a little more.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
That works.
Hey,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Carried.
Can you just sign this, just so that we know if it's approved? That's what we're gonna do now. I don't know. Oh, yeah. So you could read. Thank you. Do you want to start with that one? Read it into.
One piece of old business is application 2014-15-6, which is the propane bulk storage. As it's been the past couple of meetings, this item has been continued indefinitely until the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environment Protection reviews the application and provides us with a report. So we won't be taking up anything on that. What do we got under other business that we can tackle? Harry?
So under other business, we have discussion regarding 2081 Middletown Road. And sorry for taking these out of order. I don't know if, okay. Okay. So we'll go to B, so 8B, discussion regarding Alimentary Brewing Company. If you wouldn't mind coming up, I'll give a little intro. And I had told, in fairness to these applicants or interested parties, I had told them that we probably wouldn't be getting to their items until 8 or 8:30, so that's why a few people aren't here. So this is David, correct?
Yes.
David and Denise Prather, and they have approached the town about the possibility of opening up a brewery in North Branford. Their interest lies in finding space in North Branford, and so I asked them to just come before the Planning and Zoning Commission They provided just a memo describing their business, and since there's nothing in our zoning regs that speaks specifically to breweries, that's why I asked them to come, just kind of to describe if it would be more retail component, more manufacturing component. So they're here this evening, so I'll let them explain.
Yeah, what our plan to do is a 5-barrel microbrewery. So we would have a manufacturing facility
Closer to the mic.
where we would actually brew the beer on site, and then we would actually have a retail operation where we'd sell it. So the customer can come in, have a small tasting, 2 ounces or less, and then we would allow them to purchase either a 32-ounce or a 64-ounce growler full of our beer and take it off-site for consumption. So we would be open maybe 3 or 4 days a week, a few hours a night, and then on the weekends, like 12 to 5 on Saturday and Sundays. And we would actually be physically there, myself and my partner, on-site doing all the work. So it's 2 of us.
Any questions for
You currently have a brewing operation going now somewhere?
Yeah, currently we're actually just doing our test batches at the house.
Okay.
any other questions or comments? Yes, in the back.
Is that similar to the one in Branford right now on off School Ground Road?
Yes.
Oh, you're a sample.
Yes.
Have a drink, black and drink off.
Yeah, our zoning license, or our license with the state won't allow us to do pints. We're not going to do a pub at this point because of the zoning regulations. So you'll be able to do a tasting and then just be able to take the beer off-site.
Basically, that's what they have.
Yep. They have a manufacturing license, do that. Yep, absolutely.
How many barrels do you see?
5 barrels. It's 155 gallons total, so it's 31 gallons per barrel.
How many cycles?
We're going to do 2 to 3 cycles per week.
450 gallons there. Do you have a location for this so far or not?
Not yet.
How big of a place do you need for this?
2,000 square feet.
Are you
And-
looking for something that's already in existence, or did you want to build?
Oh, we'd prefer to find something already in existence if we could.
And what I had talked about is fitting this use under the permitted use of C-1, which is stores and other buildings and structures where goods are sold or services are rendered primarily at retail, except as may be limited by the listing of similar uses in Part C. So again, it's either that one, there's another one, C-1.2, which is stores and other buildings and structures where goods are sold or services is rendered at retail when accessory and subordinate to another permitted use on the same lot. So those are permitted through site plan review in B1, B2 zones. And when it's subordinate to another permitted use on the same lot, it's also allowed in I2 and I3. So this use would require site plan approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission. But again, it was really just more of an informal discussion, hoping to help them find a location, which has yet to pan out, unfortunately, in North Branford anyway.
Yeah, it's been tough.
You answered my question.
If we can limit the amount of package stores, is this going to have any bearing on the amount of package stores?
So just
Having
to
a brewery?
Just to clarify, this would not have, it would be consumption offsite. It would be a different license than a package store license. One of the things that we'll be talking about tonight is there are actually 72 different types of liquor licenses, and I believe that a brewery, I'm not sure the exact title of a brewery license, but it's different than a package store.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would this be something like the new vineyard going up in Norfolk?
Yes, comparable, right? But for beer, so.
Correct.
And the only difference is you wouldn't be growing the grain on
Correct.
site.
Correct.
They have parcels there. The winery can have parties there.
Well, the winery also has a totally different set of regulations that are specific to a winery and growing grapes on site and catering. So this use would have to fit into this commercial use zoning regulations as I've described.
My
And through the-
reference to the vineyard was Because if you go to a package store, you don't consume it on site. Same thing with the brewery. But this would be more like a vineyard where you don't, drink it on site. You can buy a case of wine and take it home.
But the vineyard, you can drink. The northern vineyard, you can drink on site.
Right. But this is not hard liquor. This is a wine and beer type of thing as
And-
opposed to whiskey.
And those details would be determined through a site plan application,
Once the location is,
once the
Found.
location is found.
we kind of just wanted to see if it was something that would be able to be done in North Branford. If you guys would approve something like this, if we found a site. We don't want to waste our time looking for a site and not being able to go forward.
So do we need to vote on this?
No,
No.
just comments.
Find a building, open it up.
Thank you for coming.
A couple of buildings at 139.
Yeah, we looked at a couple of them. One was almost 5,000 square feet, which is, the rent was just too much. Unfortunately, we liked it, but
Brewery.
we didn't want that. We bought it, that's it. We've tried pretty much every angle so far.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go back to the, schedule or the agenda in order. And the next item is a public hearing on the amendment to the alcoholic beverage section of zoning regs. Ron, you want to read the public notice, legal notice?
There you go.
That
Just read it. Well, what we're going to do right now, the application.
Legal notice,
Here.
legal notice, North Branford Planning and Zoning Commission. Notice is hereby given that the North Branford Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing at 7.
Excuse me.
Is your mic on?
If this is a public hearing and people are here to find out what's going on, you guys need to speak into the speaker. Okay, we can't hear you.
Is it on?
Put your mouth right on.
Okay, I'll start from the beginning. Okay, legal notice, North Branford Planning and Zoning. Notice is hereby given that North Branford Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing at 7 o'clock p.m. on Thursday, January 8th, 2015, at the North Branford Intermediate School, 654 Foxton Road, North Branford, Connecticut, to consider the following. A. Plan and zoning application 2014/15-5, proposal amendment to section 54, alcoholic beverages of the North Branford zoning ordinance to modify the text of section 54.2, measurement, 54.3, discontinuance, 54.4, location, and 54.5, relocation. Applicant Cohen and Acapora. Next, B, planning and zoning application 2014/15-8, proposal amendment to planning, to zoning regulation regarding we're just doing it, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's it.
Good evening. My name is Felipe Pastor. I practice at the law firm of Cohen and Acapora.
closer to the mic.
Even closer than that.
No,
Okay.
you have to tuck it.
I should have learned from the 4 times I was here before. My name is Felipe Pastor. I practice at the law firm of Cohen and Acapora. My practice has been limited to land use exclusively for the past 18 years. I have been working with the town of the town staff, specifically with the town planner, for some time to make some adjustments to Section 54. As a preliminary matter, there were some issues raised by a number of people with regard to my standing here, my standing as, not as standing before the podium, but my standing as the legal ability to bring something before the board. I wanted to say for tonight, I'm representing Absolute Liquor, the Bottle Crib, Town Line Wine, and Village Wine and Spirits, and I'm speaking on behalf of Colonial Wine and Spirit and Giovanni's. I've been authorized by the Council of Giovanni's to speak on their behalf. So I think that resolves this standing issue. I will say previously, I was here as a lawyer trying to adjust something for the town and honestly get some attention for myself, but tonight I stand before you with those clients. As I said, I've worked diligently with the town planner. We've gone through a number of versions of this. While we've been through these public hearings, they weren't recorded, and unfortunately, there's nothing that I could incorporate into this public hearing tonight. I wish I could, but I'll sort of start at the beginning, so I'm sorry if a lot of this is repetitious. I did meet with the town planner, and we sat down initially to go over some things that she was concerned about, because she also is the economic development officer and is trying to examine the growth patterns of the town. We did use the town's GIS system, and we plotted some of the things that that I was contemplating to analyze the impact to different churches in town, where the business zones were located, where the concentrations of commercial activity were, and how best to protect the existing open space and residential space from commercial crawl. So that's the preliminary matter. So as a foundational matter, I have vetted this with the town planner. I do feel confident in it, and we have been through 4 other public meetings where I've taken various criticisms and hopefully incorporated them into tonight's version. I will say, through my own negligence and through the number of versions that we've had here, the town planner caught that I had not made note of a well-discussed measurement tool that we were going to insert in there. In her comments, she has requested that that be inserted, and that was the straight line method. So you'll see that in her comments. So let me start from the very, very beginning. The power to adopt zoning regulations is explicitly granted in Connecticut General Statutes 8-2 and a little bit in 8-23. That empowers the town to use its police powers, in essence, to provide for the organized use and growth of the town through the police powers. North Branford has created a plan of conservation and development pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 8-23. So the plan, and actually this commission was the commission that ultimately voted and adopted that in 2009. That was created to assist the town with making future land use and zoning issues. The public participated in that process, and therefore the document is considered to be a collective work of the citizens of the town. The plan sets out the most desirable use of land for residential, recreational, commercial, industrial use, and open space purposes, as well as the protection of those categories of land from the infiltration of other categories. So let me just go through this a little bit. I'll refer to this because I imagine there's being a transcript made from this. On page 30 of the plan, which is the section known as patterns of land use, there is a notation that says most of the industrial areas within the community are relatively small and interspersed with commercial uses. There's a relatively small supply of vacant land for future economic growth. And number 18, the traditional center of North Branford around the intersections of Route 80, 22, and 139 has diminished in commercial prominence due in part to competition from newer regional shopping developments. The potential relocation of the former town hall and adjacent baseball field, which was a discussion before this board, I believe, two weeks ago, would be a catalyst to reevaluate the functions, uses, and economic viability of the town center, and to reestablish the area's importance as a focus for North Branford and commercial uses. Northford Center has served as the historic rural center of Northford community. The area has provided commercial and institutional services to the neighborhood. The village center has evolved into an automobile-oriented commercial area with a road network and land use pattern that does not effectively promote its character of a village center. As to page 60, on number 16, evaluation of existing commercial and industrial zoned areas. There's a note that North Branford Center should take better use of their opportunities for commercial and industrial areas. And there's the same statement was made on page 61 about the Northford Center. The same statement was made on page 64, but a key section appears on page 70, where the title is "The Plan for the Future." The overall goals of this plan are to maintain the quality of the residential neighborhoods, provide for economic growth that can support the level of services required by town residents, maintain the rural qualities by preserving the rural nature of the community, especially near the Farm River Valley, and commercial and residential growth should support the distinctive character of the two villages. There was a notation about zoning changes on page 79, that overall the zoning regulation should permit more intensive development of commercial properties, and then it sets out 4 standards of how that should be taken care of. On page 86, it says a major recommendation on economic development of zoning. Revise the zoning regulations to ensure that development consistent with the current and anticipated market trends and the goals of the community will occur. Next, promote the growth of Northford Center as an attractive, functional village center. And the last note is that on page 101, there was a regional plan, which is similar to this plan that was created by the state of Connecticut. And the regional plan that was created by the state of Connecticut comes to similar conclusions. Reinforce the town center of North Branford and Northford as the commercial center. Give concepts that will assist in the community development by revising the way those developments exist with regard to their storefronts as to the roadways. And that plan was in 2000. So that's a little bit of the foundational information that I have to state, because these regulation changes have to be consistent with both the plan of conservation and development and the comprehensive plan of the town of North Branford. Now, the comprehensive plan of the town of North Branford emphasizes the overall pattern of development in town. They're using zoning to make sure that works out. That is deemed to be embodied in zoning regulations and the zoning maps themselves, so that's not an independent document. The zoning regulations themselves in section 1 state the purpose. And the purpose, it pretty much tracks the Connecticut General Statutes 8-2. It's to lessen congestion in the streets, promote health and general welfare, prevent the overcrowding of land, avoid the undue concentration of population, facilitate the adequate provision for transportation and public requirements, and encourage the most appropriate use of the land throughout the town. So the changes that I'm proposing tonight will benefit the town as a whole and promote public good and welfare, and will certainly promote economic development in the already developed commercial areas of town, and are completely consistent with the plan of conservation and development as well as the comprehensive plan. The proposed regulations also assist the town in resolving a number of issues related to pressures created by zoning regulations that have not kept up with the growth patterns of the town and the need for the preservation of open space and residential land. In addition, the residential component needs to be taken care of in a retail and commercial way. That reflects the uses required in 2015. Let me start with the changes. I know we've been through these, but let's go through them again. I'm going to leave section 54.1 to the end because it confuses things. So let me start with 54.2, measurement. Now, considering the planner's addition, the measurement is going to be in a straight line. That was absolutely clear in our discussions the 4 times that I was here, and it's absolute. Measurement shall be made in a direct straight line, point to point, which clarifies a number of issues that the town had previously. So the measurement is really the system of how we're going to come to that conclusion. So that's been resolved. As to section 54.3, I only made an adjustment to confirm that it was going to be a valid existing permit. As to section 54.4, where these uses can be located, the general rule is that there's a 500-foot rule from any church, synagogue, college, school, park or town-owned playground. However, when a state highway separates the liquor outlet from the church, synagogue, college, school, park, or town-owned playground, the required distance shall be reduced by 400 feet. Now, I put that forward.
Two 400, not by 400.
Reduced to 400 feet.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, to 400 feet. I put that forward as a practical way of examining how people get around today and how things are separated today. You know, when you go to stand over on Foxen Road or Route 80, I think there's going to be very few people that would actually stand on that road and contemplate walking across it. It's a very busy, those roads are very busy. The commercial centers are concentrated around very busy areas, and it just seems unreasonable that a person standing in the street would actually feel the difference between 500 and 400 feet. It's really the town's plan of conservation and development concedes that the town has become almost an exclusively automobile-related town, and I think that takes that into consideration. As to 54.4.2, there's no change other than to adjust the way that the term is outlined in the document. 54.4.3 is taking into account, there's 3, at least from my casual analysis, 3 centers that are 14,000 gross square feet in town that seem to be a real commercial hub, and that, at least in my opinion, that you would seek to have a concentration and use those areas that are already developed to their greatest extent. And therefore, I've made a notation that the location requirements would not apply to something with a 14,000 square foot retail center. The last, 54.5, this is something that many towns have and this town does not have, and I've suggested adding it. There are 6 liquor stores in town. There's actually 1 permit too many in town. You would have to have 5,000 people move into town in order to qualify for another permit. At the census growth that I saw on the state of Connecticut's webpage, that would take about 14 to 18 years to happen in this town under previous growth rates. Now, those haven't been updated for the past couple of years, so I imagine that would take even longer. But the relocation, any liquor outlet with a valid existing permit could be relocated within 1,500 feet of the front door of the former location, and the distance location does not apply. So those are the changes. We've been through all those before. I've answered a lot of questions. I'll certainly take more questions tonight if you wish. But let me tell you about some of the support I have for that. and I'd like to have these marked for exhibit, please. I have a packet of bound petitions in favor of the regulation as written. It has 785 signatures. So this will be my Exhibit 1 or Exhibit A. Exhibit 1.
Exhibit 1.
I have letters in support of Section 54 from St. Andrew's Episcopal Church, Doty's Totoket Inn, Giovanni's Pizzeria and Restaurant, Northford Plaza Realty Group, Rosa Bianca Vineyards, Tony Z's Pizza, and VFW Post 8294. I have letters in support from Absolute Liquor, Bottle Crib, Colonial Wine and Spirit, Town Line Wine, Village Wine and Spirits. As this is a public hearing, I will address any issues that the commission members have or staff has.
I don't know if the commission would like for me to just provide an update of referrals that were sent around. Would that be helpful at this point, or?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead with the referrals and the comments.
So the proposed changes have been referred to the Regional Council of Governments. The only comment that came back was that in section 54.1, which is the general section, there was a slight error that Felipe has since fixed, but it talked about it regulating consumption on premises. But then there was that last sentence that had been added that says consumption on premises is not regulated in this section 54. So they just caught that confliction. So I resubmitted it to them, so they are reviewing it at their next meeting. But as a general practice, the Regional Council of Government looks more at environmental impact and not so much alcohol regulations. I also circulated it to the police department, the town attorney, both of which I have not heard back from. The Economic Development Commission met on Monday. They did not have a quorum for their meeting, unfortunately, but they did still talk about this, and they felt generally this was a great boost for the local economy and didn't have any opposition. The town engineer has submitted comments, and I don't know if you want to go through those at this point, or...
Not really. There's just some question for general discussion about they're minor little items. The last one that is just let's see, 54.4.3, and Felipe gave his reason, and I was just trying to understand that in a little more detail. So the question why and purpose, I just heard from him regarding that. The relocation, 54.5, I was just trying to understand that a little bit more, and I imagine that'll be part of the discussion of the commission. And one other question I just had, and I was just throwing it out for this discussion by the commission, setbacks. The current regulation provides setbacks for consumption for on-site from churches and schools. This eliminates it. That's no longer regulated. And I'm just throwing it out for general discussion of the commission.
Yes, that, I didn't really address 54.1. In conjunction with the planner, we thought that we would separate out the on-premises consumption versus off-premises consumption. The planner has created a new, I believe it's called Schedule A or Exhibit A, I'm
Correct.
not sure.
Schedule A.
Which is in essence a table of uses. And those uses now require a special use permit. So while the distance regulation has been,
Sorry, just to clarify, the Schedule A currently requires a special use permit for restaurants and beverage establishments. So restaurants and locations that would serve alcohol for consumption on site would be regulated as they currently are.
Yes.
They just would not be regulated by distance.
yes.
So the only addition that I made was adding in a definition to that table
To clear that up.
to clarify. So it defines a restaurant, which is an establishment for the retail sale of prepared food to the general public for consumption on or off premises, which may include a valid existing permit issued by the Liquor Control Commission from the state of Connecticut for consumption on site.
Yes. So that, in fact, will allow a restaurant to be across the street from a church. That's true.
And there are other, and we've talked about this at other meetings, but in my research, I looked at other communities. So there are towns such as Madison and Durham that do not actually have any regulations at all at the local level. They're only regulated by the state, so they are not dictated by a distance to a church or school or another package store. But there are towns such as Guilford that do have a distance, but they only regulate that distance for consumption off-site, so for package stores. They don't regulate distances for restaurants. So if you know the Green, there are churches and then there are restaurants within, I'm not sure, 50 feet possibly of a church or school.
I'd like to, anybody has any questions of the applicant at this time, please stand up and grab a microphone.
I have one question. On the 54.4.1,
Yes.
Reducing it to 400 feet if the state highway separates the liquor store. So the 400 feet, is that on the same side as the church or the opposite side of the road?
Well, it's 400 feet using the measurement.
What side of the road then?
Well, wherever you're going to pull the string to. The measurement system is set out at 54.2.
No, 54.4.1, you're saying reduces it to 400 feet.
Yes, to
From
400.
500 feet.
Yes.
So
if you were going to take a pin with a string,
right.
instead of the string being 500 feet long, it's 400 feet long.
Okay, regardless of what side of the street it's on.
Yes.
And previously you said this is an automobile town, so what's the difference driving 500 feet or 400 feet?
It really isn't. It's to accommodate. This is to accommodate the unique way that this town has developed. It's a very narrow town. It's a very long town. The commercial spaces are not very deep. They're 1 or 2 lots deep along the major thoroughfares. There has to be a way to have some better use of those areas. And the church that is most affected by this, the Episcopal Church, is in favor of this.
The Episcopal Church in Northford?
Yes.
Anybody with other questions? Yes.
I have a question about procedure. If the applicant's going forward, is there going to be an adverse party and then people get up and support one side or the other?
Can you come up to the microphone?
My question is procedure. The applicant goes first, and then if there's an adverse side that wants to oppose that, and then the general public can get up and take a stance and give their opinion one way or the other? Is that how this process works? Or this is my first time here?
Yes.
Thank you. So I'll just reserve my time to either support one side or the other. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I have one question. I was wondering if the attorney can tell us what the specific economic value, you said it improves the economic value.
Excuse me, can you state your name and address, please? for the
I
record?
certainly can, yeah. James Flaherty, 229 Brantford Road. What is the economic value of this, or what is the value of these changes? Just so the people in town understand why this all is being modified.
Thank you. Any other, do you want to comment on the
Yes.
economic?
Well, the economic benefit to the town is the more economical use of the commercial areas in town. There's an opportunity for more commercial uses to be put in the same commercial space that exists today. You're not going to have creep. You're not going to have residential uses being turned into commercial uses. You're not going to have very valuable industrial use turned into commercial use. That's the benefit of it. As far as a quantitative value, I believe that's up to the town to quantify, but this is a zoning use. This is not an economic analysis.
Can I just answer that question myself? I think this came up so that, just take any one of our little malls, and if there's a restaurant that has a liquor license, but across the mall, there's another restaurant, and he'd like to sell wine or beer or liquor too. There's no reason that he shouldn't be able to, and that's the benefit economically to him and to the growth of the town. I don't know if that explains it any better.
That's exactly what I wanted to know. Why we changed it.
Any other questions or comments?
Could I just respond better to this
Sure.
commissioners? I've just been thinking about what your issue is. Yes, when a state highway separates the church from the use, then you may use a 400-foot rule. Yes.
Last call for questions or comments. Oh.
I have something I'd like to say here. I think, first of all, we must not lose sight.
Can we have your name and address, please?
Oh, my name is Martin Auslander, 75 Birchwood Drive in Northford. I live just up from the center of town. I've been here for about 50 years. A lot of times when attorneys get up in front of a group such as we have here tonight, they confuse people. They lose track of the issue, which I think sometimes is the purpose of them being here. Now, that 500-foot rule is an arbitrary number. When laws are written, they have what they use as a guide is called the harm principle. And that's to protect people from being harmed by others. Okay? Now, we're more or less talking about a situation where the strong are not victorious over the weak. Okay? And we know in this country that the more money you have, the more impact you have. And I went over to the church, which was the issue here. And I spoke to people over there, and they told me they had no problem with the liquor store being across the street. Also, a representative of the church came to the last meeting here and said they had no problem. Now, the law is put in place to protect people. If they choose not to be protected by the law the way it's written, I say the law does not apply. And this is common sense. You're here for the best of the community, the best of the people who live here. And if they feel that this law should not be applied, I say it should not be applied. That's all I have to say here tonight.
Excuse me, sir, which law are you talking about?
The 500-foot rule.
You saying that we should abolish it completely, or I didn't follow
I'm
your
saying,
guess.
we're talking about particular case here, the liquor store versus the church.
Yeah,
Now, when they choose not to be protected by the law, they're saying we have no problem with it. So I
okay.
say that the law should not be applied in this particular case. That's common sense. We must not lose track
I'm
of the
sorry.
issue.
Well, first of all, I think you misunderstand. We do have zoning ordinances.
I
And that's
understand
what
that.
this is about.
I understand that. Now, also, when you're talking about stores serving liquor, restaurants, a lot of people in this country have sugar problems. If they choose not to drink a lot of soda along with their meal, I think that should be their choice. If they
Absolutely.
choose to have a beer, bottle of beer, can of beer, that should be their choice.
I
It's
think
their
that's
health
what
they're thinking about.
I think that's what we're trying to do
Okay.
with changing this zoning regulation.
Yeah.
Is allowing people to choose going to restaurant A at number 10 Main Street or restaurant B at number 20 Main Street, because they're both going to be able to serve liquor if the customer so chooses
And
to
that's
drink
right,
it.
and that's right. If you choose to go to a restaurant because the food
Right.
tastes good, why should you have to go to a restaurant where the food doesn't taste good? Because in one restaurant, you can have some liquor along with it instead of a soda, which is loaded with sugar, or the other choice. Why should you have to make that choice?
Well, that's what we're trying to say in this zoning regulation, is that if you have a restaurant here, and 2 doors down, we have
Right.
another restaurant, one can't right now serve liquor because the other one is within some perimeter.
Okay.
We're trying to abolish that so that you could have a restaurant next door to each other.
I would be in favor of that. And I
Okay,
think most
that's
people would
what-
be.
I think that's what we're trying to
And I think
accomplish.
most people would be.
The only other issue would be the liquor outlets,
Okay.
where they should be, how far away from each other they should be. But as far as the other part of it, that's what we're trying to accomplish.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I just wanted to speak my piece.
I'm glad you did.
I just feel that in all fairness to everybody, I'd like to spend my money in the town that I live in.
Absolutely.
Because that helps reduce the taxes that I have to pay,
Absolutely.
and I'd like to see these people stay in business.
So would I.
And anybody that builds a business and is in business for 20 years, there's no reason why they should be put out of business because of an unfair rent or anything else. You should have the choice to move to another location where you get where you have to pay the amount of money out that you need to pay in order to stay in business.
Okay, I just wanted to clear up what you were thinking and what we were trying to
I
accomplish.
know there's a lot of issues here tonight.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
I think I covered all of them.
Okay.
Thank you. Your
Excuse me,
name,
I didn't understand the process.
your name for the record?
Vincent Mace, I live on Gale Drive in Northford, not far from the center of Northford.
Did you get that?
You know,
Sorry, can you just restate your name?
Vincent Mace, M-A-S-A,
Thank you.
3 Gale Drive, Northford, Connecticut. I guess I'd like to start simply by saying I certainly support the applicant's petition to reduce the footage so that he'd be in compliance with the ordinance. But as I sat there listening to all of the general statutes and all of the numbers, and the previous speaker's right, you kind of get lost. And while I have great admiration and respect for the law and the legal profession, it's kind of confusing when you listen to all the statutes and the mumbo jumbo that goes with it. However, I'd like to say I'd like to talk to you as a country boy, to some country folks in a common sense manner. This issue is about a religious issue that to protect the church within the distance. And it's a man-made law. It's not one of God's 10 commandments, it's a man-made law. And if it's a man-made law, then human beings such as yourselves, men and women, can change that. When I think about what this country has gone through and how we've evolved over the centuries to match the times of society, we came from a Puritan society, we came through the Prohibition where all alcohol was prohibited at one time, And we had 13 years of nothing but gangsters and mobsters fighting law enforcements. We came through the blue laws, and many of us at our age, we remember the blue laws in the state of Connecticut on Sundays. You couldn't go to a grocery store, a shoe store, a department store, you couldn't go anywhere, maybe to the show or theater in downtown New Haven. And what happened? The laws changed. They said, okay, we have to evolve with the times in the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s, and now the blue laws have been repealed, and now we can go shopping on a Sunday. But let's talk about the liquor stores. Let's talk about the package store industry. What happened to it? At one time, they had to close at 8 o'clock. Then somebody said, well, let's extend it an hour. So now they close at 9 o'clock. And how about package stores couldn't be open on a Sunday or a holiday? What do we do now? We've evolved with the 21st century. We have package stores open on Sundays and holidays. So I think it's time for North Branford and Northford to say, you know what? It's the 21st century. Let's evolve with the times. Reduce the footage so that the package stores can be in compliance, and then it'll make everybody happy. Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
Hi, how are you? Dom Delvecchio. My family owns 847 Forest Road in Norfolk Center, and I just have a few comments this evening. First off, I'd like to indicate that I believe that Felipe did a great job with his presentation this evening. There are a few comments here. Just general history on some of the development of some of these liquor regulations. Kerry mentioned earlier that the towns of Durham and Madison do not have any regulations regarding proximity to churches and schools, to liquor establishments. And the reason for that, and it's not only Durham and Madison, there are a number of other towns in the state, is that prior to the enactment of zoning regulations in the 1960s, what happened is that a lot of these communities, their business districts, developed quite a distance away from their schools and churches, so that what happened was that there was really no need at that point when the regulations became effective, or when they had an opportunity to enact them, to create separating distances between schools and churches, because when they enacted their zoning regs, they created
Thanks.
So when the zoning regulations were enacted in these towns in the 60s, what happened was that basically these permitted uses or permitted zones where liquor establishments were permitted by use, they were nowhere near their schools and churches. So they did not need to regulate the location of their liquor establishments. That's not what happened in North Branford, some of the other towns. What happened is prior to the enactment of the regulations, the liquor establishments and the business districts kind of grew around the churches and schools. And that's why some of the towns, when they enacted regulations, enacted separating distances with specific separating distances from their churches and schools. Most of the towns have a 500-foot separating distance between churches and schools, and some today continue to have a 1,500-foot restriction in like-kind liquor establishment permits. All right, I think the most critical piece of the regulations that Felipe is proposing, Section 54.1, which, in my opinion, I want to make it clear that essentially the proposal deregulates on-site liquor consumption in proximity to your schools and churches. The town will no longer be able to regulate on-site liquor consumption in proximity to schools and churches. There was some mention earlier, and the concern, I guess, with the on-site liquor is it's, obviously you're talking about your restaurants with bars, your taverns, pubs, I think if you were to ask the police department, you would probably find that those are probably the sites that are most burdensome for them. They, people tend to drink too much, they get unruly, obnoxious, they drive home from these establishments intoxicated. And those are the ones that probably, in my opinion anyway, there needs to be some emphasis on. But, this regulation going forward, if it passes, will basically allow no longer allow the town to regulate on-site liquor in their proximity to schools and to churches. And the mention of the special use permit, I know in the proposed regulation, it states that it will now be regulated under a special use permit. But just keep in mind that the current regulations, and I believe Terry mentioned this earlier, the current regulations currently require a special use permit for any food establishment that serves liquor. So this thought that there's a change in the special use permit, or that a special use permit is now needed, is not accurate, because it currently is a requirement of the code. And so what I'm going to do is just share with you the current proposal and the existing proposal. If you compare those two tables, the current, I believe it's section C5, the first page there with the two, you compare it to the existing regulation, you'll see that there aren't any changes at all in the requirement of the special use permit.
If I can just clarify, maybe there was a misunderstanding. That's correct. There were no changes to the table. The only addition was the addition of the definition.
Correct, and that's what I'm stating. There really isn't any change to the existing regulation. The current regulation requires a special use permit, and the proposed regulation is now, if you look at section 54.1, the item in red is suggesting that this is going to be a new change, a special use permit for the regulation of on-site liquor. And what I'm suggesting is that it already is in place. That special use permit requirement is already in place. So this 54.1, the town needs to make a decision as to whether or not they believe they need to regulate the proximity of on-site liquor to your churches and schools. And just keep in mind that this is, you are the legislative body of the town. So history will show, whatever you decide to do this evening, history will show the intent of the legislative body was to either deregulate the proximity or deregulate on-site consumption from our churches and our schools, if that's what you choose to do. And the only thing you're going to be able to do through a special use permit, you will be able to regulate based upon traffic concerns, parking, hours of operation, things of that nature, but you will no longer be able to regulate the location of these on-site liquor establishments in their proximity to the churches and schools. Also, the regulation changes proposed would deregulate and eliminate the 1,500-foot rule for on-site consumption. Essentially, there would not be any requirement for separating distance between on-site consumption. I personally do not have a problem with it. I think the 1,500-foot rule is an attempt to regulate the marketplace. There's really no need for it in a free market economy. It does not promote economic development, and it serves as a non-compete clause. So the elimination of the 1,500-foot rule that's proposed, I don't have any objection to that. As I stated earlier, there are a number of towns, and I primarily just looked at the surrounding towns, Durham, Madison, Clinton, East Haven. None of those towns have a 1,500-foot rule in effect. And basically what happens is the free market economy kind of regulates the proximity of liquor stores and on-site consumption at restaurants. All right, moving on, section 54.2, that's the measurement provision. And this dictates how the measurement will be conducted. And I agree with Felipe. I think it's important that we do use a straight line measurement. I think everyone's in agreement with that. There was some confusion with that in the last regulation. The only other change that I think you should consider and is essentially where the measurement will be conducted from. I'm just going to pass out some of the other town regs here for a second. If you look at the Town of Clinton and Guilford's regulations, you'll see currently the Town of North Branford's regulations are drafted in the same manner, that the measurements are conducted from fixed points, from the nearest corner of a building or of the school or the nearest corner of the building or the package store location of the church. And the reason that they have selected fixed points, I mean, today the proposed regulation suggests that it be a front door to front door measurement. A lot of these commercial buildings today have plate glass storefronts, and it's very easy to relocate the front door of a commercial building. You could have a large commercial building, and they had this issue in Middletown a few years back. And for a couple $1,000s, you can pick up and move the front door of a commercial building in a plate glass window, whether it be a 14,000 square foot building or not. So if you really have a serious intent of, regulating through measurement, the fixed point measurement that the other towns are using is, I think, a better means of accomplishing that. Right. Section 54.3, there's a slight change here, and I think section 54.3 and 54.5 kind of go hand in hand. Zoning regulations were enacted to essentially regulate property use. And there's an attempt in 54.3 to kind of take your eye off the ball here for a minute. And regulations don't regulate the person or the holder of the permit. And you only have authority to regulate the property use. And the old regulation, I think it was correct, where they're regulating the use of the property, not the permittee or the holder of the permit. Here what's happening is they're kind of suggesting by this slight change that, in my opinion, that they're regulating the holder of the permit, and it kind of fits and coincides with 54.5, where, and this is one of the reasons for the change in 54.3, is that what they're suggesting is that any liquor outlet or permittee can relocate within 1,500 feet of the radius of the front door of his first establishment, and thereby negate all the requirements of section 54.4. In my opinion, that's not a good idea. I mean, it would allow them to move anywhere within that 1,500-foot radius, whether it be 2 feet from a church, school, playground, wherever. So that presents a problem because you cannot regulate the permit holder. Zoning regulations only allow you to regulate the property use, and so I think it's important to keep that in mind. Okay, the next section, 54.4, and I'm going to pass out another set of regulations here for 1 second. All right, section 54.4, this is, what everyone keeps referring to as a 500-foot rule. there's a proposal to reduce this to 400 feet if you're crossing a state highway. Now, the regulations that I shared with you earlier, they stated Durham, Madison currently do not have any regulations regarding the proximity of schools and churches because their zoning districts were created so that they knew that their business districts where these liquor establishments are permitted were not in proximity to schools and churches. Other towns and the towns regulations that I just handed to you, which are Guilford, Clinton, and East Haven, all regulate separating distances between churches and school and liquor establishments for package stores. And essentially what they're doing here is each one of them has focused on, each one of them has a regulation of 500 feet. It seems to be the standard throughout the state. And the 500-foot distance is not based upon the ease of access from the schools or the churches to the liquor establishment or the package store. The 500 feet came from whether or not it's based upon visibility, whether their church or the school is within viewing distance of the liquor establishment. And it's more associated with the negative impact, the advertisement and branding of liquor and liquor consumption has on at places of public gathering where young people may congregate. And so that's really where that 500-foot rule came from. It has nothing to do with how easily it is to access the package store from a church or school. And the most interesting thing about, if you look at the Clinton regulations, you'll see that the Clinton regulations became effective January 1st, 2015. The town of Clinton just enacted their regulations, and they chose to follow North Branford. They selected the 500-foot rule. And interesting note, they were having problems with the Morgan High School and the new Charlotte Crossing complex down in commercial complex down in Clinton. And the key point there is that the 500-foot rule was enacted. There's a 4-lane highway that separates Clinton Crossing and the school there. And they still went with the 500-foot rule. Personally, I do not have any, just pointing some of these things out. These are the standards, that some of the other towns have enacted. And again, if you look at the town of Clinton regulations, you'll see a copy in red. The town residents wanted a 1,000-foot rule, but the Planning and Zoning Commission decided to limit it to 500 feet, and they felt that was an adequate viewing distance. Like I said, it's based upon the visibility of the liquor establishment from the church and the school, nothing to do with physical access or how easy or difficult it is to access the facility.
Mr. Delbecq, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
How did you decide that it was visibility instead of walking distance or?
Well, that was something in discussions with the state of Connecticut. That seems to be how that rule was enacted and why it was based upon 500 feet. It has.
You talked to whom in the state of Connecticut that?
Some of the supervisors at Consumer Protection, and that was, basically how this all originated. That separating distance rule was based more on visibility. And personally, I don't care if you reduce it to 400 feet. That's, not a concern of mine. That's your choice. My concern is, with the 1,500-foot rule, I think that it's basically an attempt to regulate the marketplace. I don't think there's really a need for it. I think I think it discourages economic development. It also acts as a non-compete clause. But these are just some of the thoughts I'm throwing out. It's up to you guys to make whatever decision you feel is appropriate. Right, and just a couple more comments here. Section 54.4.3. This is what I call the box store provision. And essentially you'll see that this allows any large complex or facility, 14,000 square feet or greater. Basically, you can negate all the regulations of Section 54, once again relating to the proximity and location of the liquor establishments, schools, churches, playgrounds. And the reason I call it the box store provision is that if you really think about this, if you had a package store of 2,000 square feet, they would have to comply with all these regulations that you currently have in place for Section 54 regarding separating distances between schools and churches and so forth. What would happen here is that if a package store of 8,000 square feet wanted to move into a 14,000 square foot building, and I think Felipe was very accurate in his assessment. I think there's at least 3 buildings, one in Norfolk Center that's 14,000 square feet. There are 2 others, I believe, at the other end of North Branford. That 18,000 square foot, or 18,000 square foot package store, which would be a large store, could move into that facility and then bypass all these regulations. To me, that's not appropriate. And one of the suggestions I would think that you would want to consider in the town of Durham, what they do is they actually restrict. I think this is a good provision, but my thought would be to reverse it and limit the size of the package stores to, let's say, 3,000 feet, preserve the mom and pop package stores, and kind of eliminate the big box stores that would discount liquor establishments that would come in. And the town of Durham regulates their stores and the commercial plazas through restrictions in square footage. And I would suggest that it might be a good idea for North Branford to consider that. And if you eliminated the 1,500-foot rule, it would still leave you some flexibility in the regulation of the box stores, because I think that's a big concern coming into town, and that's why I think you really have to give some thought to that. And the last thing is Section 54.5, and that's, once again, as I stated earlier, that kind of fits in with 54.3, which is, it would allow any existing liquor permittee to move within 1,500 feet of his current location, completely bypass all the regulations in town, proximity schools, churches, playgrounds. I don't really see a need for that. Like I say, I think, once again, it tries to get your focus on the holder of the permit and not the property use, which is where the emphasis should be. And that's what the zoning regulations can regulate. Zoning regs can only regulate property use and not the person or personal holder of the permit. And I think that's all I have for this evening.
Would the commission like my comments at the end or after each person?
No, let's do the comments now. Hopefully we're getting close to the end.
Okay. With regard to the last speaker, the regulations that the speaker submitted are like floating in a cloud here without analysis of the plan of conservation and development. One of the speakers said, well, my speaking was very confusing. There's a statutory standard that has to be met here. We had a regular discussion at a public meeting. This is a public hearing. These regulations, if they're changed, have to meet a statutory criteria. So the regulations of other towns, absent analysis of their plan in conservation and development, and to say that a simple way, what their plans were for those regulations related to how their town is developed and the way their town is actually existing, has nothing to do with North Branford. Every town along the shoreline is unique in the way that they're developed, in the way that their land is set out, in the shape of the town. So absent the plan of conservation and development, those regulations are meaningless. Second, the church that is most affected is in favor of this. I don't know why the speaker was saying that there's going to be an issue. The church had no issue with this, unless he's going to open the church. With regard to the 14,000 square foot or greater plazas, the reason that is a significant thing is because plazas of that size always have parking in the front, and the building is always shoved to the very, very edge of the rear of the parcel. So by nature, the uses are always far separated from the road and far back in the parcel. So if you were going to measure, from, I've proposed the front door, but if you're going to measure from the parcel edge to the parcel edge, that's an enormous parcel. it does not relate to how that parcel actually exists to the public who are using it and the surrounding uses. Thank you.
Hi, Chris Kranick, 49 Cortlandt Drive. I'm okay with changing the distance from 500 feet to 400 feet from a school or a church. And I'm certainly okay with getting rid of the 1,500 between on-site consumption. But when we start talking about no regulations for on-site consumption near churches and schools, and I'm not sure everyone knows that that's what we're talking about, that I'm not okay with that. A place like a Hooters, for example, could open up in front of a school or in front of a church, and I don't think that would be a position we'd want to put ourselves in. Tell me how deregulating on-site consumption near a church and school is a necessary and good idea.
I just want to clarify again, so it's not a deregulation entirely, it's deregulating distance. So you're correct that any establishment that serves liquor for consumption on or off-site could be located next to a church or a school with this regulation change. However, for on-site consumption. With the special use permit, though, that requires a public hearing and other requirements. So it allows the Planning and Zoning Commission some latitude and discretion of issuing that permit. So one of those things are proving, the applicant would need to prove that they have not only simple things like parking and layout and traffic flow, hours of operation, but most importantly, they would have to prove that it would fit within the character of the neighborhood. So that's, in my eyes, where I see the potential for the Planning and Zoning Commission to say, no, we would not want a Hooters across the street from a church or a school because it doesn't fit within the character of the neighborhood.
Yeah, I understand that argument completely, but I think it puts it's too incumbent upon the P&Z to then make up the rule. There are P&Z members who may want a Hooters across from a school or church. So, and there's residents who may not. So why take it to that chance? What's the point of 500 feet from a church or school? I mean, it seems, why change that?
Sure, and that's up for the commission to decide. If there's too much of a concern, then the change may not be necessary.
Well, I certainly can't see a reason why to put it to a special permit at 500 feet from a school or church. And if the commission is going to vote that way, I would certainly like to hear the argument as to why we're doing that. What's the reason to get rid of the 500-foot rule on on-premise consumption? Because I'm totally against it.
On-premise or liquor outlets?
I'm talking about on-site consumption can now be anywhere close to a church or school instead of 500 feet away. Why are we doing that?
It's my understanding that the 5 or the 400, whichever they decide, from a church or school is not really the primary issue. I thought, in my mind, the primary issue is that one on-site liquor, serving liquor, restaurant, bars, whatever, can be anywhere next to another one.
Correct, and I completely agree that that's fine. Get away with the 1,500 foot between on-site consumption rules, put them next to each other, that's free market, I'm fine with that. What I'm not fine with is taking what we have now, which is no on-site consumption within 500 feet of a church or school, and we're getting rid of that.
And it's not going away, it's going from 500 to 400.
For on-site, it's going away. So let's know what we're discussing here. We're getting rid of, deregulating on-site consumption within 500 feet of a church and school and going to nothing. That's what you're voting on.
Just to back up and talk about kind of how this process works. So this is the first night of a public hearing. Granted, there have been other meetings about these proposed changes, but they were more just discussion. The commission is now reviewing this, getting comments from the public and the applicant, of course. And so it's up to the commission. They don't have to approve this or deny it. It's not an all or nothing. They can adjust it, amend it based on comments and feedback. So I just wanted to provide that. It's not that this is exactly what they are voting on. It's based on dialogue and back and forth and feedback from the public and the applicant.
Okay, so, my feedback is to the commission that I think it's a huge mistake for getting rid of the 500-foot rule for on-site consumption. And I just wanted to reiterate to the commission that is what's being proposed, and that's what you are voting on. So.
I think there has to be some consideration. I really believe that now whether this is written right or not, maybe we'll have to make some changes, but being 500 or 400 away from a church, I myself believe that should stand, but it should be a whole different part for on-site consumption, which is different than a liquor store, that there shouldn't be any regulations for. So if you choose to serve liquor in your pizza place next door to, another restaurant, so be it.
I agree completely, but what about next to a church or a school?
Well, I'm saying, I think the regulation is either going to be 500 feet or 400 feet. I don't believe we're doing away with it.
Carrie, could you clarify what this zone rate change is? Because my understanding is it is doing away with the 500 feet for on-site consumption. Correct or incorrect?
This proposal, the one that is before us right now, does have that component, yes.
Okay, so I'm not sure from my
So,
speaking
but
with
what-
Frances, she understands that.
Well, what I thought I just was trying to explain, and this is not an all or nothing. So the version that the commission can go with is one of many. They could just adopt one text change out of all of these proposals. They could adopt all except one. They could adopt a variety of...
Fair enough. I just want to reiterate to the commission that I'm against deregulating distances.
I don't think that's in here at all. I mean, according to this 54.4.1, it says that the liquor...
The way it's written is, if you don't read the first portion very, very carefully, you could be convinced that, yes, the on-site was regulated. When Carrie and I met a number of times over a number of months, she and I came to a conclusion that let's take these things out, let's let the distance regulations be what they are, wherever they are, and let's plot this on the town's map. We used the computer system. We sat together for 3 hours looking at all of the zones that these uses could be in, because they're not allowed in all zones, all of the properties that were available at the time, where the churches were, where the schools were. We very carefully plotted every single location in the town. There was one location that might be a problem, and that was near the Episcopal Church only. But yes, I agree with this speaker that as written, and at least as proposed tonight, without any modification from this commission, that if you are consuming liquor on site, there is no distance requirement between a use of a similar permit, a different kind of permit, or a school, or a church, as written tonight. That is true. But I can say that the impact, because I know what the impact is, I sat with the planner for 3 hours, is one location across from the Episcopal Church.
Excuse me, before we move on, you know, I've looked at this piece of paper over and over, and I asked people on either side of me, can you point to where it says that we're doing away with that regulation?
So, I'm sorry, sir.
What
Section 54.1. There, in 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me give you, you're looking at a smaller version of this. Can I give you a bigger one?
Okay, so you're saying where it says consumption on premises is not regulated
in this
54.
section 54. It is completely exempted
Okay.
from the regulation of this section. It refers you to a table that is already existing.
Right.
That has a clarified definition. So, yes, this has exempted all of the on-site consumption.
Well, I think that the board has to take a hard look at that.
I agree. This was a suggestion. This was a suggestion of the
Just because you
town.
didn't find them today, doesn't mean that, you know, somewhere down the road, there's all kinds of changes. I mean, that's
I
one of the
agree.
problems that this town has had right from the beginning, is that the zoning regulations, there weren't any really. Everybody did whatever they darn felt like doing. And then a little at a time, things started getting changed. But unfortunately, those things that were grandfathered in has made the town what it is. And this board is trying to realistically change some of those. But that one, and I think we all probably read it wrong, I know I certainly did, we really have to take a hard look at.
That was suggested by the town. We worked to make it the best that we could. This is a night to talk about it, to vet it, to see whether it works, to see how the town feels about it, and to see if it's going to be in there at all. So we've proposed it. I'm not saying that it has to go in that way at all. This is the first night of a public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one quick comment. Fran, you do understand that, I think what you're suggesting is the elimination of the 1,500-foot rule. You're okay with that? No.
No, I'm not okay with any of it right now.
Okay.
I certainly wasn't okay with with this first 54.1.
My name is Marcia Dunkel. I live at 315 Notch Hill Road, North Branford. I'm a member of the North Branford Congregational Church. My name is Marcia Dunkel, and I live at 315 Notch Hill Road in North Branford, and I'm a member of the North Branford Congregational Church. Can you tell me why I shouldn't be concerned that if this is passed, it's not going to affect the North Branford Congregational Church in the North Branford side of town, or the Zion Episcopal Church on the North Branford side of town, if you decide to put a Hooters in on the end of that nice big lot now that we have at the end of the church, because the state made the road wider? Can you tell me that this is not going to make an effect on that? Could be 5 years from now. I don't care. I plan on being here for 5 years. I think you've got your argument geared to just Northford Center and the businesses and the church, St. Andrews, that are not against the zoning. And I guess I don't know what else I can read more diligently, but this is the first time I've heard about any of this tonight. And I think that we need to find a way in this town to publicize issues. When you're changing regulations that affect all of us for a long time, and then there's nothing we can do about it, like the gas tank proposals, I just think we need to be more diligent and make sure that we all know what we're doing, because 3 years from now, maybe some of you won't even be on this board, and I'll be a whole different board, and they may have voted entirely different. So I think we need to know what we're doing before we do things.
I think
better.
also that my issue was that today there's all kinds of religion and all kinds of churches. And a church could pop up in a vacant store someplace, and there's still a church. So you have to look at that. It's not just the Episcopal Church or St. Andrews or St. Monica's. It's all the churches. And, you know, that's my issue.
I'm thinking we're having a Wednesday night meditation Taizé service, really nice, dark, silent. We got a bar next door now. People are coming in and out of the church. And you can allow that if they get close enough, they can be built close enough to the
Is it
church.
commercial or business property next
What's,
to it?
what's to say? It's nothing right now.
No, it's only that's commercial property,
Route 80? Sure.
right next to
I
the
bet it
church.
is. I'll bet it is.
You know that before you come to the podium.
The town hall property is commercial. They're trying to develop that piece of property.
Yeah, they want to put things in there. They want to put shops in there. They want to put businesses in there. I'm not trying to be accusatory. I'm just saying, I want to know what it is that we're deciding on, and I don't think that we have all of the answers. And I would hope if we have another meeting, it's more publicized so that we can all come and listen and make an educated decision. That's all. Thank you.
I want to thank you for giving me the exact same copy in larger print. I still can't find where it says.
It's right here.
Sure, it's in the first
Look,
section.
read this right here. You see this?
It says, consumption on premises is not regulated in this section 54.
It's actually the
So
second
that
line.
exempts it.
The second line, it used to say on or off, now it just says off-site.
Yeah, so that was a suggestion of, that Carrie and I came to. This is an idea, it's just an idea tonight, so we can work around that. But let me also say, I've been here, this is my 5th night here over 5 months. So I'm sorry if someone didn't know what was going on, but, we've been discussing this for a long time.
And I'd also like to add that just from the town's perspective, I've tried to do a better job of getting the word out. So I did speak with the paper and put it, beyond the legal ad that's required. They did a story in the Sound, again, to try and get the word out. So if there's other suggestions, please let me know after the meeting of ways to get the word out about these meetings.
Update the website. If it's not even updated, you're still on 2014, there's no listing for tonight's meeting.
Could I ask for a procedural point of order? Could I ask the chair to ask all those in favor who wanted to speak, to come up and speak, and all those in favor who just wanted to raise their hand and be counted, and then we could do the opposite for the people that were opposed. So we would have an idea of how many people here are in favor of this and how many people are opposed to it.
Can I just say, I don't think at this time we should be taking that kind of a vote. Since the board hasn't gotten these regulations down to what they would even consider, I don't think the public right now is aware of everything or, educated enough to be able to say yes or no, because we can't, and we know the regulations, so that's my feeling.
Okay.
Okay, can we get on to something else? Are there anything else on the proposed regulations?
Hi, Donna Pursley, 24 Marjorie Drive. He spoke about the character of the town and the conservation plan and development. And I don't know where liquor stores actually apply to that, but if we want our town centers to be villages, if we want our town centers to be our villages, how many liquor stores do you want in each village? I know we all like to have a drink, well, a lot of people like to have a drink once in a while, and most of us are responsible. But some people are not responsible. And I think the Planning and Zoning Board needs to be regulating the irresponsible people that, like not just a Hooters, but somebody can come out of any bar and be rowdy and disrupt the neighbors. And then you have all the petitions and everything he has in front of, that he gave to you, are probably, I'm not positive, but probably are patrons of those establishments. And he surveyed the bar owners, and they're all for these changes, of course, because it benefits them. It doesn't benefit the residents so much as the bar owners themselves or the liquor store owners. This whole thing is here because of one applicant and one lawyer. And he has made many, many proposals to the changes to the planning and zoning. And I think they should probably be broken out into pieces. because I think it's very confusing the way it is. And when you put something in the paper saying changes to these regulations, the residents don't know what that actually means. I think if you actually broke it out and say, we're looking to change the distance between a liquor establishment and a school, you'd probably have a lot more people here. So I think that would help clarify, having more residents know what's going on. And you have, this whole thing is here because of one store and one location, and we need to consider the whole town. Like she said, there are churches in North Branford, the other churches in Norfolk, all the schools, and we need to consider everything, not just this one site plan. Okay, that's it.
Thank you. I think we ought to keep the hearing open.
Yes, you mean to the next meeting, to the 22nd, yes. Right?
I'm going to close the hearing now, but we're going to continue it at our next meeting, which is the 22nd.
Could I say that the hearing would have to remain open in order for additional evidence to come in?
Continuing the hearing.
Yes,
Continue,
thank you.
right, to January 22nd.
Continuing it till the 22nd. The next item of business is application 2014-15-8, an amendment that covers self-storage buildings. In this case, we have the regulations are silent on the building, so this is covering new territory.
So, in the past, have you voted to continue the public hearing? Just to...
No. Okay.
Okay.
We'll wing it. Go ahead, Bob, introduce yourself.
Okay, good evening. For the record, my name is Bob Cruscolo. I'm a licensed engineer, and my office is in Branford, and I've been in practice for some 30 years, mostly specialized, mostly in Branford, North Branford, Guilford, and the local areas. And I've done, obviously, a lot of site planning and commercial development and residential developments proposed before your board through the years. I have proposed and gotten approved self-storage buildings that I believe on Cerro Road in North Branford. And those were always approved, and I believe it was about 15 years ago, through the Zoning Board of Appeals Commission, because your regulations don't have anything in it about self-storage facilities and how to design them. So that brought about my proposal before you tonight. Clearly, your regulations don't address anything about self-storage units. And there are no specific design standards for self-storage units. So I drafted a set of regulations for your consideration that are dated 10/2014, October 2014. And they are regulations that would permit self-storage buildings in the industrial I2 and the industrial I3 zones as a matter of a site plan approval, a very detailed plan that would come before you, and those facilities would include no outside storage. I also have added a line that would allow for self-storage facilities with outside storage, but those would be a special use permit, which would be a public hearing, which would allow for more public input if such a facility came before you. Now, both of those are clearly proposed only in the I2 and the I3 zones, which I think are typically appropriate for this type of use. My regulations go through definitions, and if you have them before you, the definition of a self-storage facility is clearly written. It's talking about individual, leased, rented, sold, or otherwise contracted for individual customers, and they are clearly for the storage of personal or business goods and related properties. I have addressed the size of the individual units, and that is in paragraph number 2. and they can range from 25 square feet to not more than 500 square feet. And then I get in that paragraph and I talk about the site plans and all the requirements that are currently in your standards right now, but this adds a little bit more muscle to the proposal for you to entertain additional applications as they may come before you. In the first line item, which is C 13.2, self-storage facilities without outside storage, item number 2 clearly states that for those type of proposals, that all goods and property stored in self-storage facilities shall be stored in enclosed buildings. No outdoor storage of boats, RVs, vehicles, or storage of outside shipping containers would be permitted within this proposed zone. I have identified that no electrical outlets would be allowed in individual units. I think by allowing that would not allow for the true spirit of what these units are, which are for individuals to store their excess goods, and it could be for a prolonged period of time or a short moving in or out period of time between homes and businesses and other things. I've addressed buffers for you, and buffers would include properly screened buffers to local property lines. In addition to that, I believe this would be unique to your regulations. It would include the designer to incorporate a licensed landscape architect in developing and maintaining a very well thought out landscaping plan. In lieu of that, in some areas where maybe it's adjacent to a road, I have specified the minimum height of a natural buffer that may be left that would be providing a buffer between local properties and the street. I've addressed setbacks, and that is on page 2, item number C. And I talk about minimum setbacks from buildings to property lines of 100 feet where the buffer is adjacent to any residential zone. I thought that was very important. That's in keeping with your other standards in your I2 and I3 zones. And then I also added a little bit about paving and parking and other access, and I felt that 50 feet would be the minimum distance that you would really want adjacent to any of the nearby zones. I've addressed let's say the aesthetics of the building and buildings, and I would want to have them all to be a neutral tone that would be reviewed and approved by your commission, not any bright colors that would not be in keeping with the facility, and sometimes you see these facilities that do have bright colors, but item number 5 would prohibit that. I've addressed hours of operation, and I've done that in line number 6 by saying that there would be no tenant that would be allowed access between the hours of 9 at night and 7 in the morning. So basically, all the nighttime activities would cease. I've addressed allowed uses, and clearly the permitted activities are only activities permitted in individual storage units, which would be the rental of the unit for pickup and deposit of goods and or property in storage. And then I addressed a lot of items which I felt were very important for you to consider. I feel it's very important that storage units not be allowed for uses for anything that would be for offices, workshops, studios, hobby or rehearsal areas. No manufacturing, no fabrication, no processing of goods, repair of vehicles, engines, and the like. There would be no retail sale allowed, and there would be no allowance for storage of flammable, perishable, or hazardous materials, or keeping of any animals with any of these structures. I've addressed access to the units, which is item number 8, and I believe that access should be by the corridor within the interior of a building and or a properly designed man door and a overhead door as an exterior door, and those are included in items A through C. Site lighting is very, very important, and I believe that 8D would strengthen any regulations that you have if you incorporate this. It talks about full cutoff fixtures, which are fixtures on a light that you look at that you don't see the lens at all, but you would see a shield to it. And I talk about having what would be a site lighting plan, also called an Isolux plan, that would meet the minimum standards of the Engineering Society of North America. So what you would have is a site lighting plan that would be very pleasing to the eye. It would not have bright spots. It would not have light that would extend beyond the property lines, but it would be the sufficient light in accordance with these standards to allow for the proper access to these buildings for the owners and the renters of the facility without harming any of the neighborhoods. I then addressed on item number 3, pages 3 and 4 and 5, which go into what you would do if an applicant came before you for a special use permit for outside storage. They are identical to the site plan, but for outside storage, we talk about having the special permit, which is a public hearing, and I include in item number 2 that it should be limited subject to the provisions as publicized.
Thank you.
In section 41.2.10 of your regulations. Both these regulations gear into your site planning regulations that have been included in your planning and zoning regulations, and I feel that there's a lot of good stuff in there added to this that would give you a better development for applicants that came before you for self-storage buildings. So that's my proposal before you. I'd like to open it to questions that you may have or the public may have.
One quick question, what's the date of your,
I believe the draft is October 30th, 2014.
That's what I had, I thought you said November 6th.
If I did, I apologize.
So quickly, I just wanted to go over, these proposed zoning regulations were also circulated to the Regional Council of Governments. They did not see any issue with these proposed regulations. The Economic Development Commission met on Monday evening. They did not have a quorum, so they couldn't take a vote, but they were generally, the people who were there were in support of this. And the town engineer also had pretty much just an administrative suggestion, which I think makes sense, which, if you,
Yeah, I mean, basically, Bob went over it in section 41.3.6, which is the site plan portion of it, and 42.5.13 are essentially the same, other than the item 2 in the 41.3.6 that eliminates any outside storage, and item 2 of 42.5.13 allows it. And I was only just trying to get less words to come up with something that maybe the special use shall comply with all requirements of 41.3.6 except item 2, which shall be as follows.
And I agree that
that's just
that
a
would-
wording thing, and I'm just trying to
That
cut
would
words
shorten
down.
it.
Because it says the same thing, and it's
Correct.
very
Yes.
well worded, I think. That was it.
Any questions? Comments?
Just one comment as the town planner. I think one thing that Bob pointed out that's really important to note is just how this process started, which was that Bob had applied for a variance with the Zoning Board of Appeals. The ZBA then suggested that that was not the right forum, that instead a zoning regulation change proposal to the Planning and Zoning Commission would be a better outlet. And in talking with Bob, you know, there had been previous variances issued for the same type of thing, which in the long term, from a planning perspective, a variance can be fairly easy to get at times, but difficult to hold on to, but it's not the cleanest way to actually get something done. So it's better to actually have something permitted through this permitting process, through zoning, so that you're not dealing with variances and something that's subjective. So in the long run, I feel like this is a cleaner way for the town to outline what is allowed so that we don't have to issue variances.
If I may add, I believe also you will be getting you'll be getting better development plans that come before you with this regulation. It adds a lot of design considerations for someone coming before your board, and you will end up with a nicer site if these regulations get adopted.
I just have one question. I kind of listened to what you're saying. To enter all these, they would have a door, garage door. Now, you said something about the center.
Yes, there are facilities where you could have a center corridor that you actually would walk down, and you would enter your unit to the right or to the left. And then the other types of facilities, instead of having a center corridor, you would have an outside corridor that'd be 24 feet wide that you would drive down, and you'd be able to get into a garage door or a regular man door like the one in back of you.
I just don't understand the reason for the corridor, because if I was unloading a household of things that are going to store, what would I have to do, carry them all in?
There are facilities and unit owners that I've worked with before that would want one type versus the other type, depending on record keeping and other type of things that they're trying to attract for storage units. There is a need for both, and that's why I included both in, so that when developers come before you and engineers, there'd be a little bit more flexibility for them in their design. I think for you as a commission, you still are getting an attractive building.
Anything else? Yes, sir.
Is there a height limitation?
Height limitations would be clearly geared into this. Well, no, I think the height limitations for an I-2 zone would be a building of
I
30.
believe it's 35?
35 feet.
So it's consistent with the current zoning regulations.
Correct, and if I may say, a larger building like that would include an interior elevator and the corridors that are included in my regulations.
That's why you need corridors.
Correct, yes.
There's one housekeeping item I neglected to do at the start of this. Can you read, Ron, can you read the legal notice for this part of the meeting?
Okay. Legal notice, North Branford Planning and Zoning Commission. Item B, Planning and Zoning Application 2014/15-8, proposed amendment to the zoning regulation regarding self-storage. The proposed amendment entails the addition of lines 13.2 self-storage facility and 13.3 self-storage facilities and outside storage to Schedule A in Section 24. Proposed amendment also includes the addition of Sections 41.3.6 and 42.5.13 to the regulations, which entail the standard and provisions for these two lines, line items used. Applicant Bob Cruzcola.
Thank you. I should note for the record that seated for this hearing are members Leskovich, Sienna, Hultgren, Acting Chairman Charles Gunn, the Town Planner, and the Town Engineer. I'm going to continue this public
Can I
hearing.
just ask a question about it?
Okay.
Bob, going back to this corridor, are you saying that in this regulation that is a must, or it can be either or?
Either or.
Okay. So they can have all garage door openings or center corridors, whichever they choose to.
Correct.
I just want to make sure about that.
Or a mix.
Okay.
We're going to continue this hearing till the next meeting of January 22nd.
Why?
And if we want to change what we brought to the public hearing, people can answer questions.
There hasn't been any questions.
That closes.
Any questions?
No, we're going to change it. let's just see. With that, we'll continue the public hearing till the 22nd of January. Next item of business is action on the public hearings, but both of them have been continued. The next item was, just for the record, was the propane storage, which we continue indefinitely till we hear from the state. Next item of business, I'd like to push that to the back end of the meeting. And we have some other business which I hope will go fast. And this is a discussion regarding 2081 Middletown Avenue.
So this is new business. It's an application that the commission has seen in the past. You saw it back in, oh, sorry. Did you jump over?
You went to 2081 Middletown.
2081.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Should we, what about 80 West Middletown?
Well, he just went on.
Oh, okay, sorry,
Coming
gotcha,
back to him.
gotcha.
What happens to the propane? Just pass it right.
We can't act on it until the state passes.
Okay, we'll pick up the changes to the zoning regulations. There's the applicant here.
Yeah, they're trying to pass over.
Because this is the item, right? Want to read the item?
Yeah, sure. So it's PZ application number 2014-15-12, proposed changes to the zoning regulations regarding bulk storage of liquefied natural gas, LNG, including propane, and regulation changes regarding public notice for text amendments. Applicant Christopher Kranick. And Attorney Ainsworth.
Good evening. We're back again, as we were last month with the application. Nothing has really changed from then. All we've done is move forward a month. So if there are any questions from the commission, we're happy to answer them. But if you need a brief background, just to refresh your recollection, the regulations are basically proposed text amendment to fill in the lack of regulation for liquefied natural gas.
I had just one quick one. On the last
Absolutely.
page, it starts with item 2.
We're in the public hearing, are we?
No.
I don't understand why it's being addressed.
This is a draft amendments that have been submitted by an applicant, and we're considering those.
And I
Changes
represent
in
the
text.
applicant.
I understand, but I don't think they can consider it without opening a public hearing.
Well, we have this, we're going to review it and ask them questions or have them fill in stuff this week.
That sounds like a public hearing to me.
You're accepting the application. The
Right.
town's attorney has spoken that they can speak.
I don't think he's addressed that they can receive it and set a public hearing, but this isn't a public hearing.
Sure. If he wants to ask me questions about the application, I think that's fair game.
That's a public hearing.
No. Public hearing is when one testifies regarding the merits of the application. If they want to ask me administrative questions about my client's application, I think they're entitled to ask those questions and get answers to them.
But you didn't ask administrative questions. You were describing what the genesis of your application was. That doesn't sound like you.
Right, and I don't think that's inapproproate. You may think that, but it's not inappropriate for me to explain what my client's doing.
Yes. Let me get his. We have, it's on.
they can then the commission will set a public hearing. It's the general public,
Thank
he's
you.
the applicant.
Thank you. So this is a document from the town attorney, and I guess I'll read the entire thing. So the issue presented, whether or not the Planning and Zoning Commission may discuss the proposed regulation change regarding propane storage, given it currently has a site plan application regarding propane storage at 40 Cyril Road before it. So this is the question that I presented to the town's attorney, Attorney Jesmond. The brief answer, yes. Discussion, and I don't know if I need to go into all this. The point is that he did say that the commission may discuss it. So administratively, what we've done in the past is accepted an application. The application was submitted to me on December 5th. Officially, it has been received tonight, which was the date of the next Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. So the point of tonight was to really just set a public hearing date. As far as questions and back and forth, that's possibly a question for the town attorney as well. I'm not an attorney, so I don't know what legal ramifications that has for the town or the applicant or applicants.
Did he not say you could discuss it or not?
He said the commission may discuss it, yes.
So we're going to hold a discussion on this draft, what I'm considering a draft proposal.
Can we hear what you're saying?
We're going to hold the discussions on a draft proposal for the regulations. As has been pointed out, this is not a public hearing. We have accepted the application, and we have to set a date for the public hearing. But tonight is to ask questions, clarify points of the application.
The question would be between the applicant and the board only, commission only, right?
Correct.
Right. According to the attorney's letter, we can have a discussion.
To go back to the discussion, on the last page, number 2 starts a description of properties, but I can't find number 1. Go back.
The last page.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
It wasn't.
right. So number 1, I believe, is existing. So the text 1 for petitions concerning the text
Right.
of these regulations, right? 20 copies.
Correct. The bold language is the proposed text amendment. The non-bolded language is the existing. So number 1 is on the page.
Yeah, it wasn't bold, so I didn't think, I didn't pick up on it.
So that's not a change.
Okay. In that, you were talking about this notification for text, and you wanted the item 2 there is a description of all properties with the town of North Branford potentially affected by text amendment, including a description of the zones and uses affected and the nature of... Sure. This is a fairly detailed requirement for how do we publicize a text change. And the problem I see with this is not publicizing it, but is how do you handle notifying all of the people affected, which is everybody that owns land in the town.
In this particular, number 2 that you're referring to, is that when someone applies for makes a petition to do a text amendment, they must describe the properties, and actually it should be within the town of North Branford potentially affected. In other words, they're not saying you have to notify them. You just have to inform the commission in the application what properties may be potentially affected. And a good faith effort to comply with that would be someone saying, look, this will affect all multifamily residential properties, or it'll affect all properties with, water frontage, something like that. I mean, So someone would come up and maybe be a little bit more descriptive about what they think the impact might be, so that someone who's reviewing it, if they want to take a look at the town record, will be able to determine, oh yeah, this might impact me or might not. I mean, and if an applicant decides that they don't want to do that in good faith, it may tell you something a little bit about the applicant's intent.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
Just a staff comment about regulations that regulate propane. I have been talking with the fire marshal, and he informed me that sometime after January 1st of this year, the regulations will be updated. So that should be implemented within the next few weeks, and that is relating to the Connecticut State Fire Prevention Code and how things such as propane are actually controlled and regulated. So just kind of an interesting point of information. And the other just kind of comment to the board is that I would like to have the fire marshal, fire chief, and other appropriate departments and boards review these proposed regulations, just as other departments have reviewed the other proposed text amendments that you have seen tonight. So I just am recommending that we provide enough time between now and the public hearing for that to happen, for me to be able to submit these to them and then obtain feedback.
Okay.
That certainly seems sensible to us.
Yeah, one other, this is in your new section 51.7. The very last item, I just wanted to talk about the retail LNG storage. And should we define that? It sounds like that's the hardware store that fills propane tanks. The retail LNG storage.
And yes, and in fact, it would reach anybody who's doing it on a retail basis. So it would in fact include the person who's filling up gas grill tanks as well.
Yeah, maybe that needs a little work. Because it's sales, right? Retail LNG sale and storage or something like that would help define who you're talking about.
We certainly could propose a definition, if you'd like.
Item 2 says 1,500 gallons should have a 1,500-foot setback from residential. How does that impact the gas tank agway?
How large is their tank? I don't know. If they're over 1,500 gallons, then they would have to be 1,500 feet from abutting residential properties and structures, not their own. Obviously, if they have a structure on their own property, it wouldn't apply to, it's not intended to apply to the structure that's associated with the tank, but neighboring ones.
All I know, because I had my tanks filled the last week, I don't know how big the tank is, and you can see the house right next to the tank, fairly close.
Then if it were within, let's just say it's a 2,500 gallon tank and there is a house less than 1,500 feet away, then that use would become non-conforming, legal non-conforming. It would definitely be grandfathered. But it couldn't be expanded.
Any other questions at this point?
Another question. How do you handle condominiums that have, they don't have 5,000 gallons, but they do have a series of 1,000-gallon tanks to heat the building, and it's on one lot?
Okay. Retail, wholesale, and industrial facilities. And it actually would be commercial LNG storage. So that wouldn't be commercial, it would be residential. So they would not, it wouldn't apply into that particular use.
Isn't that discriminatory, where you have, it's okay for residents to have over 5,000 gallons, combined? yet a strip mall, where pizza place and other retail outlets can't have, 1,000-gallon tanks in the same lot.
Well, I mean, the inherent nature of all zoning is discriminatory. I mean, rules apply to some and not to others. The reason for applying to commercial facilities is that it's an intense use. It's for commercial purposes. And when people do things for commercial purposes, we sometimes hold them to standards of safety that we don't necessarily apply to residential, because we have a great deference to residential. For instance, we don't regulate people's chimneys and a lot of things that people do on their properties in their own yards that we don't let commercial properties do. So we do treat residential differently than commercial in many different aspects of the zoning code. So, but I would agree, you're correct.
Yeah, it rules by any other name. I mean, a gas tank is a gas tank is a gas tank. So does it? Oh, it doesn't matter?
But even so, I mean, if there's a property currently structured this way, they would be grandfathered in. You just wouldn't, the idea is not to aggregate gas within a certain radius on a property, so that you don't create a larger explosion hazard. And so you wouldn't want to encourage a massive aggregation of gas on a single property, whether it's residential or commercial.
Was there any engineering basis for this, your sizes? You talk about, like 5,000 and the 1,500. Is there any technical support for that being picked?
Yes, all of these were based on standards that have been used in other communities. We are prepared during the public hearing portion to bring in someone to testify to that, an engineer that the group has hired. But the radius is based on calculations done by for example, a program that calculates blast radiuses for certain volumes of stored gas. And then the same thing with the berms, the earthen berm suggestion here for protecting for blasts. That's a commonly used technique for protecting or reducing fire hazards. That tanks can be buried either completely or partially, and that's a standard activity related to.
Thank you.
That's a standard thing done in fuel storage.
Last call for questions or comments from the board.
No.
This is just a board to help them get ready for the public hearing.
No, it's not.
No?
It's not.
What's our next step?
But we do intend on clarifying those.
How's that?
We do intend on clarifying those issues at the public hearing.
So then the next public hearing, or excuse me, the next planning and zoning meeting is obviously January 22nd. That's too soon, just because I need at least 25 days to notify the Regional Council of Governments as well as the various departments in town that I mentioned. The first meeting date in February is February 5th, which could be a possibility, maybe a little soon in my opinion. Again, just to be able to have meetings and then get feedback. The second meeting in February is February 19th. And then the first meeting in March is March 5th. We have 65 days to set the public hearing from today, which is March 14th. So the commission could decide to have a public hearing, as I mentioned, anytime February 5th, February 19th, or March 5th, in order to obey those timelines.
How about the 19th of February?
I agree. The longer we put this off, the worse it is. The
So
19th,
February
February.
19th, we'll have a
No
public
more.
hearing.
Understood, yes.
Yeah, February 19th.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
thank you.
Good job.
Our next piece of business is application 2012-13-14, or 13-12, site plan for staging and storage area at a existing trucking and hauling business, 88 Parsonage Hill Road. Owners Gene Srabowski, J.J. Oshinchowski, K.W. Oshinchowski, applicant Kenneth Oshinchowski.
As the commission may remember, this application had been received dating back to 2012. The commission actually approved a site plan for the proposed work. However, the site plan was challenged, and the court actually directed the town of North Branford Planning and Zoning to actually deny the site plan application as a result of a court case that was held. So I've drafted a motion it's really just administrative, to deny the application.
On what grounds did they want us to deny it?
The court said we had to.
Yeah, but why?
The court felt that the activity was an expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming, not an allowed use. So I have it on the agenda just to go through the motions essentially.
I mean, the man's been in business for 50 years.
Well, we have a draft motion if somebody would care to make it.
No, I not.
Okay. Sure,
Actually, I'm going to abstain.
Draft motion is, I move to deny the planning and zoning application 2012/13-12, site planning for staging and storage area and structure for existing trucking and hauling business at 88 Parsonage Hill Road, Assessor Map 51A, Lot 7 and 7-1, R440 zone, owner Gene Zawowski and J.J. Ochinowski and K. Ochinowski, applicant Kenneth Ochinowski. As shown in title map, property located at 88 Parsonage Hill Road, North Branford, Connecticut, prepared for Kenneth Ochinowski. Site plan for Ochinowski Services, LLC, storage and staging area, sheet 1, dated 6/18/12, revised 2/4/13, Briscoe Engineering, LLC.
Right.
As directed via court decision dated October 31st, 2014.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried 3-1.
I think the court is
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, so moving right along.
We can go back to 2081 Middletown.
That's not the point. They've been in business
Back
50 years.
where we started. So, discussion regarding 2081 Middletown Road. This is just an informal discussion with the Planning and Zoning Commission with Ryan Mappa, who owns Earthworks in North Branford. He has, Northford specifically, he has an existing business, but is looking to relocate to an existing building in town closer to the Durham line at the other end of Middletown. And so I suggested that he come before Planning and Zoning because he has a great proposal, in my opinion. It would revamp an existing building. However, there's some zoning questions, not regarding the specific use of the parcel that he's looking to do, but more that he would need outside storage as a result of just his business. So I thought that it would be good to have some input from the commission.
Ryan Mappa, 1015 Middletown Avenue.
Excuse me, we are talking about Middletown Avenue, not Middletown Road.
Correct.
Sorry,
Middletown
that was
Avenue.
my error.
You're correct.
Yes.
If I may, I have some plans I'd just like to pass out. On top there is the existing property, the way it stands now. It's been vacant for roughly 10 to 12 years. The business end of it, the second floor is rented apartment. My business is Earthwood Products, and primarily we sell wood pellets. We are looking to expand. We have a very small space on 1015 Middletown Avenue with not much room to grow. We currently rent, and we were hoping to get a a showroom, and also some use of the land there would be helpful for us because I sell mulch to residential customers, local customers in town. The current property on 2081 Middletown Avenue is pretty neglected. I put together a plan that what we would do to modernize it as well as bring it to the conformity of the neighborhood cosmetically, and as well as the landscaping and yard. There's a significant amount of back taxes with the town and the sewer on the property currently. There's a few owners involved that just don't show much involvement or care anymore with the property, and that's where I'm kind of intervening, hoping to bring it back to life. I thought it would be a great area for our business. Being in town currently, it would give us more road frontage and also help that building there come back to life. There's not a whole lot in Northford as far as small commercial lots for sale, especially in that area where we'd like to be. And this one here I had my eye on for a while, and that's why I'm here today, to try to hopefully persuade it, make it go our way.
Beside the architectural stuff on the building, what other construction or stuff are you going to do to the site?
Actually, the building itself is non-conforming, so nothing can be done to the building, so no additions, anything like that. We would simply fix what needs to be fixed, modernize it, rehab it pretty much.
Yeah.
What we're in need of is outside is the problem for some storage areas. I was looking to put a fence in and put our bins in for the mulch is pretty much the concern, where we put if we were allowed to put the bins for the mulch, or I guess a retaining wall, you could call them. They're like concrete blocks.
You contacted any of the neighbors?
Yeah, I just got the plans, so Saturday morning I'm going out to the neighbors to present everything to them. This all kind of just came about. The first thing I did was meet with Carrie and the Economic Development on Monday. I met with them quickly. There was pretty positive feedback there, but I will be going Saturday to the neighbors.
Are these bagged pellets or loose pellets?
Yes, they're bagged, and
So,
they're put on a
as far
scale.
as equipment that would be running around there would just be maybe a forklift?
I have an electric forklift for the wood pellets, which is what I would use for that. For the mulch, I have a small John Deere tractor with a front loader on it. It's a green John Deere tractor. And it primarily loads pickup trucks, and I have a small dump truck that I use for local residential deliveries.
And would those be stored outside or in the garages?
No, inside, in the garages.
The equipment would, right?
The equipment,
Right.
yes, the equipment will be stored inside in the garages, yep.
So one thing that I've been working with Ryan on is, a large component or enough of a component of his business is, mulch, which if it had to be eliminated, it would be a problem for his business. So that's where the, if he just did wood stoves and the sale of pellets out of the retail space, it wouldn't be an issue with zoning because of the pre-existing use. It had been a pizza place, and now there's some tinting business that was in there but is currently vacant. But what I was looking at, and I just wanted to kind of run this by the commission as well, is it is a residential zone, so I've been working with him to try and get the outdoor storage and the lot coverage to comply with the R40. So it's a 2% maximum lot coverage by accessory buildings, and that's what we've been looking at for that hoop. He talked about having a hoop structure to store the pellets in, because after meeting with the fire marshal, those could not be stored inside. And then also with the 3 bins or 4 bins, depending on what the final plan looks like. With the buildings, the storage, and the paving, it could not exceed 30% of the lot coverage. But with that outdoor storage, he would need a variance. So ZBA is the next step, but I thought by having him meet with EDC, planning and zoning, at least just to get some feedback along the way, then the biggest hurdle is ZBA.
Would it make sense converting it from residential to commercial?
And besides, we have got to encourage people, businesses, and not only for taxes, but it's for the development of this town. So anybody that's willing to, you know, put time, effort, and money into a facility, we certainly would encourage, and hopefully ZBA will allow it.
I appreciate that. We agree with you. And we're also, these plans here, we're just, you know, we're reaching out for options, and we're willing to work and do whatever we can to hopefully make it work. But it's a small scale. Carrie said you're allowed, 30%. We have less than 14% combined with the structure, the paving, and the outside storage. So it's very.
So why does he have to
So,
ZBA?
well, that's where,
No, I do not own it now. It's just under
Yeah, it's
contract
just the- it's
upon
just the outdoor
if we
storage.
get town approval.
Their issue, I mean, the use, as you can see, I mean, it's, the facility needs work, it's seen better days, and getting it fixed up is an ideal thing, and getting a business in there. As Carrie said, the bigger issue is the outside storage, it's in a residential
bins.
neighborhood, trying to address that issue, and whether through release of ZBA, or there's other accommodations that
Would
Carrie
he
is
need
going
a
to address.
public hearing for that?
We
Or they would,
ZBA would need one.
ZBA would have a public hearing and notification
And
of the neighbors.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, it's immediate neighborhood that
Right.
there could potentially be an impact. I'm not
Understandably.
saying that there will, but that's where the concern would lie, I would think.
Its whole life, it's been commercial building, used for
That's
commercial
correct.
structure. It's just the lot.
It would be good to
with
see
the outside
something in there, absolutely,
Right.
to revitalize the area.
Right.
Right.
And David, you had mentioned the possibility of a map or a zone
Yeah.
change. It seems like kind of an island among residential, so that's the challenge.
Well, I mean,
It might be spot
A lot of times
zoning.
you have houses that are along the main highways that eventually become doctor's offices or become commercial properties. And this is on Middletown Avenue. So, I mean, maybe not this year, next year, 5 years down the road, you get one business and another wants to move in and another one, so.
Like the doctor offices, there's a historic conversion regulation in there that allows for it, like along Route 80 and the like. I mean, this one I don't think applies quite that way. And I would tend to agree with Carrie, that it's a residential neighborhood all around it. It's a pre-existing non-conforming use, and I think the thought process would be to continue something under the pre-existing non-conforming use. Because it's not really suited for residential. I mean, the way it's constructed, I don't think it was residential above and then commercial down below, so.
you
doesn't
can't
really fit.
change, you can't do spot zoning changes.
That's what I'm saying, have it rezoned.
Yeah, but that doesn't, it wouldn't apply in this area. It has applied in other areas where if the whole street decided that it was okay with them to go to business because it would be advantageous for them to sell later. But this area is all residential, and you can't do spot zoning.
Yeah, but a non-conforming use, don't you have to go through all the paperwork again? Because it's not that it's grandfathered in, once the title's changed. Then you
It
guys,
isn't when the title changes, though. I think
It's not?
the grandfathering and the non-conforming uses, the building and the size, like the footprint it covers, you're allowed to expand it a little bit. So I think that's the straightforward way to approach it. And you don't get into any massive zone change expectations.
Non-conforming is not conforming.
And, well, with this site, another indication, I mean, it's been retail or commercial, you know, going back to when it was constructed in, I think it was the 50s.
51.
So, you know, there's never been a attempt to try and bring it into conformity. It's always remained non-conforming.
Oh, don't get me wrong.
Okay.
You know, I know the property. I
Yeah,
drive
right.
by it a lot,
Right.
and it needs something.
Right.
I just don't want you to get tied up, you know, and then all of a sudden there's some legality in your.
Well, that's why we're here. We're just under contract upon contingencies with town approval, so it's not like we're trying to get it approved for our use and conformed with the neighborhood without creating havoc, trying to do it
When
the
they
right
buy
way.
it, will it continue to be a non-conforming lot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that?
When they purchase it, saying everything went through, it'd still be non-conforming?
Yes, as long as it's actively used as non-conforming, it's non-conforming. The only times that it changes is if there's clearly an intent to abandon, or if it goes not unused as that pre-existing non-conforming for more than a year.
How long has it been empty now? More than a year?
That, the building official is looking into that. There is a tinting business. I don't know how long. They've been vacant from there, but,
So if it's over a year, then it falls back?
then there, you know, it could be a challenge and an appeal to ZBA.
And it's a technical, when did he leave? Did he stop paying? Could it still be there?
Right. So currently, the two storefronts are vacant. There's an apartment upstairs that a gentleman is renting. So,
Well, are we giving you any direction?
Only that we certainly would go along with it, and if that's a recommendation to ZBA, you know, so be it, but it's up to them at this point.
okay.
But we have
appreciate
no objections.
it. Thank you.
Here, you're under.
Yeah, clean up that place.
Thank you. Okay, 8C, discussion regarding the proposed map amendment for 224 Foxen Road and 190 Totucket Road. I believe the applicants are here. It's not, just to clarify, it's not an application. This is an informal discussion. I've met with all of the applicants, and they had requested to just have an informal discussion with the commission about what they'd like to propose in the upcoming weeks.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bernard Pellegrino. I'm an attorney with the Pellegrino Law Firm in New Haven, and I represent Totucket Land Holdings LLC, who's represented here tonight by Don Capelli. And also with me, and you'll hear from him in a moment, is Bob Criscolo, who is an engineer working with us on this proposal. And as Carrie mentioned, we met a few weeks ago informally. We're preparing to file a zone change application as it pertains to properties located at 224 and 190 Totucket. 224 Foxen Road and 190 Totucket. We wanted to show it to you, receive any feedback that you might have before we file. The properties are, and Bob maybe can point them out as I speak so you can understand. Properties front on Foxen Road, and the frontage on Foxen Road is currently zoned B1. And you can see the existing zone line runs right across the front. 224 Foxen Road is a large parcel that is split zoned. It comes, that's the property where the existing trailer facility is. It comes through the B1 zone into the R40 zone, and then it loops around and comes back across, back again through the B1 zone onto Foxen Road. There's the piece in the middle, Mr. Totucket Land Holdings also owns. That's Zone B1. His business is located there. And he also owns 190 Totucket, and that parcel is zoned currently R40. The reason we are contemplating the zone change, quite frankly, is that when your plan of conservation and development was adopted a few years ago, this corner was specifically targeted in the plan of development at page 80, suggesting that these areas, in an effort to stimulate economic development in this area of town, and quite frankly, as Route 80 continues further to the east, also additional parcels were targeted in the plan of development to convert this land from R40 to B1 to create a pocket on that corner that could produce economic development, utilizing obviously the Route 80 frontage to do so. So the plan of development suggested that all of the land owned by Totucket Land Holdings be rezoned to the B1 district. In meeting with Carrie and looking at the entire property, however, we thought that drawing the rezoning line as Bob has depicted it on the plan might be most prudent for a number of reasons, having to do specifically with the character and nature of the land that we've chosen not to, at least initially, propose for the zone change. And I'd like to have Bob explain that to you and then get any feedback or comments that you might have.
I need a longer arm. This is a 60 scale plan, and there again, this is Foxen Road, this is Pawtucket Road, this is the Farm River that comes across.
Where's Route 1? No, Route 1 is here. Would it be north or south?
Route 1 would be south of this.
Can you point out the mobile gas station?
Mobile gas station.
It's on the south.
In this corner here. All right, so you're at the corner, this is Pawtucket Road, going south would be towards Branford, going west here would be towards East Haven, and this is really the subject parcel that Mr. Capelli owns in the Farm River. Bernie had talked about this being, you can see the trailers and the roadway system that's here. And this orange line right here is the existing zone line. In front of that, from Foxen Road to the orange line is the B1 zone, and the remainder of the property is the R4 zone. The proposal is, well, the considerations, this yellowed out area here would be the B1 zone, changed from R40. And this is somewhat of a unique parcel of land because of the Farm River and its watershed and how large it is. The 100-year FEMA zone line is way up into here. And what we have is we do have some areas over here which obviously isn't developed. That is a floodplain. And along here we have another floodplain. And the development right here of the trailers really is in a
Thank you.
is in a flood zone. So it seemed to us to leave all of that alone because of the natural resources and how sensitive that is. And to expand any zone would be on the high land area up in here. You can see clearly the topography rises from elevation 50 to about 70 on Pawtucket Road. So there's about a 20-foot rise along there, and that would be what would be logically the best area for development on the site. So that basically sums up the mapping as we have it right now. This area right here is about 4.5 acres, and really it's clear that the zone line is right across the side.
Along that, it's like a road on the right, left side, the right side of your border there. Isn't that what a road is every time it rains?
No, not up here. Not at all. This is up very high. The flooding limits from the Farm River.
Oh, no, but road, because I think Pawtucket Road is blocked there.
No.
So the road flows when by Farm River.
No, that would be south.
No, he is correct. There's a spot where Farm River crosses.
If I may, there's a tunnel area there because the town has not been adequately able to create a drainage catch basin. One of the discussions we had with the town engineer was that we would grant the town a right-of-way to tie that catch basin into the standing water that's on the backside of our property to allow a proper drain to solve the flood issue that's at Tucker Road.
Just for another landmark, there's other industry, the wire company. Is that
Yes, that is the Concord. Yes, up in this area, you can see Tucker Road.
Okay, it's farther up.
So it's up here several hundred feet. And on the other side is the sports complex.
Bob, on the front, on the Route 80 side,
Yep.
you got those three or two lots or two little lots and the big one. They are all under the same ownership as the back piece?
Yes, it's really a lot here that Mr. Capelli owns, and the zone lines, the other piece goes up like this, and comes around.
How about the one on the corner there, the same owner?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it's really part of the parcel, it's just the zone line is making it look like a separate parcel.
Yeah, that's what I
It really
read.
wraps around it.
Correct.
So we have almost 20 acres there.
And what's above? Yeah, all in there.
This is a residential lot. The single-family home is right here. Then it goes down to a wetland. The only other home is up in the corner at the other bend. Woodchase Drive is here.
The one last thing I wanted to mention, and it's, I see some of you have the proposed land use map, which is in the plan of development. The scale is a little bit tough to read, as we're like right in here in this little red dot. But when you put that map onto a bigger scale here, one of the points we were trying to make is the plan of development calls for this entire section to go to the B1 zone. But for the reasons Bob has explained, our thought was just to propose this portion of the entire piece to go to B1 because realistically, that's the only additional land that could be reasonably be developed for the commercial use in conjunction with the land that's on it.
The whole trailer park would go away then?
No, the whole trailer park would stay existing as a pre-existing use in that area. So the plan, the ultimate development plan would be not to touch the trailer.
Now, if it converts to B1, what type of development are you looking at in that area? Light industry?
It's hard to say. Any use is permitted in the B1 zone, I guess you can best answer at this point.
Okay, my question occurred. Can that section of Totoka Road handle if that property became B1 for trucks and whatever?
Well, Totucket Road is I guess, a more challenging road, certainly that section over there. As Don indicated, there's a big water problem over there that if something like this goes forward, that would be a, you know, a requirement. We'd look to see that that was solved. And again, the other question is access, how they developed it, would it be from you know, the piece on Route 80? I mean, this is for a zone change, and the question is, how does that whole thing get pieced together? Where's the access? Where's the proposed development? That certainly would be part of any site plan application review and potentially requirement, depending on, again, if the access was from Tutucket Road, there may be some requirements, maybe some things they can do. If it's from Route 80, that you know, there may be something that has to be done on Route 80, depending on what the DOT requires as well. But that's part of site development we'd have to look at.
Yeah, I think we would envision the redevelopment of the site.
I'm too far down the line, I'm sorry.
A little bit, but it's a fair point. I think the changes to the plan, or the suggested changes in the plan, are pointing to some economic development in the area, but not discounting the fact that in order to do that, there may have to be some infrastructure improvements to make that happen.
How big is that parcel?
The proposed in yellow?
The yellow parcel is about 5 acres.
So at R40, you get 5 houses on there, and that property can handle 5 septics. Going to business, how would that be?
That property will handle no septics, as the State Department of Health has already ruled on that because of the size of the property and the intensity of the trailer park. There is no septic allowed. So I've gone to the WPCA already and have had discussion like we're having with people now, and they approved the connection at Wood Chase.
Basically, just, I mean, it's not a formal approval, it's a conceptual nod, I guess, at this point, because the feasibility is there and the details will have to be worked out.
Correct. We would require a small pump station.
The only thing, and I think that's what you were alluding to, is Tutucket Road is a tough road, and it certainly can't handle any kind of more traffic than it has now, especially going north or east, whatever you want to talk to it. So what kind of business could go in there that would have a big impact on it? I don't know.
I would think that that's the straight section of the Tutucket Road. That's straight
Well,
ahead.
That is the best section of
That's the best section.
of Tutucket Road north of Route 80. I mean, I guess that's about the best I can say.
I mean, that is the best part. And you have a stoplight right there.
Yeah. It's our.
It's not a big wide road. I mean, just turning in that road.
There's no hills and
No, it's straight, that's for sure, yeah.
It's our intention is to have a retail, which is already allowed in the B1 section of our property, which my business is currently located in. And I've been in business in North Branford for over 30 years in this location. It's my intention to develop the corner, which is the prime retail section fronting Route 80, and move my business to this section. Because when I get a retail tenant for the corner, I'll have no place for my business. And that's pretty much the end of the development.
When the Brown House or the White House?
The Brown House is ours.
The White House is right on the road.
Yes, the Brown, yes. It's, according to the police department and the DOT, they want that house to go.
Yeah, one of the,
It's obstructing the visibility of the corner.
I think one of the other benefits of the ultimate redevelopment of the corner would be the elimination of those nonconformities, not only in use, but also in location.
So in essence, if that went, you really could almost come in off of Route 80 to that.
Or widen the road there.
I think with a retail or commercial, you could at least want the main entrance there.
I guess to answer maybe your question, it doesn't seem to be an unreasonable request.
Appreciate your feedback, and we'll see you probably in about a month. We'll file.
Submit an application, right, and then we can, yep.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
I know it's been a long night. We appreciate it.
Okay, moving right along. So 8D, discussion regarding 50 Fowler Road. So as you all are aware, there is construction going on at 50 Fowler Road. This was received multiple approvals from planning and zoning and also inland wetlands, going back to even 2007, I believe. So there was a special use permit that was granted for construction of, I believe, 270 elderly units, and then also various site plan approvals that were issued. There was an initial phase 1 site plan approval, and then 2 subsequent site plan approvals that were approved in 2012. There was a little bit of dip in activity. The point being, just to summarize this, there are currently issues happening at the site. There's problems with the construction that's going on, in that there appear to be some violations that have occurred on site. And as the Wetlands Enforcement Officer and the Zoning Enforcement Officer, I've been on site. I've spoken with a concerned citizen numerous times, met with the town manager, met with the town engineer, and have identified a variety of issues on the property. I've listed these in a memo to the commission this evening, and then also the developer and property owner is here, as well as the concerned citizen. So just to highlight the major flags, the red flags that have come to my attention, is that the lack of a Connecticut Department of Environmental Protection general permit registration for discharge of stormwater and dewatering wastewaters from construction activities. The second is bringing material on site and failure to clean up and remove off-site any abandoned junk and debris. There's questions about whether that material had been existing on site or whether it was brought on. So that kind of covers both the issue of bringing things on or possibly removing things off-site. And then the third thing is, again, just large things that have come to my attention: lack of proper installation and maintenance of siltation and erosion control measures and prevention of erosion on site. With those being listed, I would say that over the past definitely 6 weeks, definitely 4 weeks, I've actively been working with the property owner and their project manager on site. Been on site at least once a week, if not twice, to try and just work with them through these issues, to try and get things under control, and they have been very responsive. The silt fence has been put up. The material that was brought on site still does exist on site. They have explained to me that they are looking for a place to take it to. The site is not perfect by any means. It is a large site. It's almost 100 acres. All of the trees that were supposed to come off have come off. There's a lot of stormwater to handle. And my intent in working with them was that the ground is probably very frozen now, and if not completely frozen, it will be by next week. So I wanted to work with them to try and get them to find a remedy and continue to move forward, but take this seriously and can try and get some remedy to the issues. So I bring this to the Commission's attention. I can show you some photos if you're interested in seeing them, and then I don't know if you're interested in hearing from the property owner, applicant, or if you have questions to the concerned citizens, etc. I also just want to note, this was also brought to the attention of the Inland Wetlands Agency at their December meeting. They had concerns as well and directed me to, take a look, figure out what's going on, make a thorough investigation of what's happening, and not just do a quick reaction, but instead make sure that the accusations that were being made were actually accurate, and so forth. So that's the action that I've taken to date.
I guess my question here is,
In the mic.
I guess my question is, what does planning and zoning have to do with this? You know, right off the top, if they don't have a,
These were conditions of the approval.
Those are requirements of the
but if
permits.
they don't have a permit with the Connecticut DEP, they're shut down, right?
Thank you.
So there are multiple issues that are happening, yes. Yes.
And that would be the,
That's
binary
switch. Yes, no.
One at a time, and very short. The evening's getting long here.
I promise to be very, very quick and succinct if the board would let me speak for no more than several minutes. I believe that we waited half an hour for the meeting to start in the first place. So there are several people that would like to bring to your attention. I believe that not only is this permit not valid because of the stormwater, that's a binary decision, as Mr. Sienna has noted. But I think that I have several other things that are very, very pertinent to the planning and zoning board, and I think that you should hear, you know, and again, I believe that it requires a cease and desist immediately. But, you know, as I said, I think that I'll be able to summarize this extremely quickly.
5 minutes work?
Pardon?
5 minutes work?
5 minutes it is.
You got it.
My name is Patrick Rowland, and I represent Eugene Quessel, a resident of North Branford for approximately 50 years. And I'm actually quite happy to do so. I formerly was a resident of North Branford and was married at St. Augustine's 30 years ago. So, you know, somebody had asked me once why on earth I'm doing this, and I think that it's clearly to represent the town, but also for my family as well. So to give you a quick, short synopsis, I provided the town council on December 9th at their meeting a series of violations, including a junk drive with an extensive letter, and I also provided another letter to the inland wetlands the following day. I was also at town council 2 nights ago, at which point they, I think, quite sternly gave Ms. Duquesne some direction in terms of trying to identify where we needed to go with this, in that there are clearly violations, and I think because of that we need to continue to address them. So with the planning and zoning, the original special use permit was issued in 2006. It was approved August 16th, 2007. The original special use permit included individual site development plans should be required for each construction phase, starting with the first siting, submittal plan being called phase 1. Each and every site plan requires a new application, and new application under your current regulations require not only an application but a fee and a payment. Not the board, or not Carol, and now not Ms. Duquesne, to slowly, quickly wave over it. And actually, that's 62.6.2 is your current requirement, and each of those additional development plans need to be in writing, and they were not additionally done in writing in each of the additional applications. Furthermore, this original applicant was not filed. One of your requirements for a permit to be valid is actually be filed in town hall. So because this wasn't filed, it was filed in 2012 and is modified by Carol Zebb. So the original permit was beyond its 5 years, so that permit is now actually invalid. So the next piece, on March 12th, 2012, the agency was signing off on a variety of conditions, 18 and 20, under the inland wetlands, interlocking wall, sloping bank original, and site plan requirements of an additional habitat area for wildlife. None of that has been provided. The planning and zoning, by reference to the inland wetlands, not only are violations to inland wetlands, but it requires all of the other inland wetlands approvals for your planning and zoning to continue to be valid, so that is not valid. The 2006 was never filed in the original permit, only on file, and I did check with the town clerk actually just today and verified that this one permit was the only one. Excuse me. So now that that period has passed, that permit is actually invalid and cannot be continued upon. October 26, 2006, wetland letter concerned about upland, the amount of density and the concern over the total space. There's only 25.6 acres of upland. You divide that into the 8,000 square foot density and the 9,500 square foot density for the capacity, you'll never be anywhere near 270 units. I don't think it's the intent of the developer to ever get to the construction. Once they took the sewer plan, and that was removed by planning and zoning as part of it, the original application and the original purpose for having all of this is what I brought to the town council and WPCA 2 nights ago, were that the sewer would be connected through Munger Brook and through the marsh, so that you could have additional sewer going up Route 80. That has been stripped from this process, so not only can you not get a sufficient density based upon your criteria, but that you, can't get the additional work, and the permit wasn't done. September 30th, 2008. The waiver of conditions, you were talking about parking. Every single one of the units has to be handicapped accessible, and you're taking away parking instead of making parking more advantageous and having additional parking for handicapped vans. So I find it kind of incredulous that you actually did that. But that's actually long beyond in terms of what's been in front of us. So 5 years ago, the construction, as part of that 2008 permit, required the construction to be completed. It wasn't completed during that period of time. We'll talk about the importance of a Connecticut statute that was extended permits. But that 2008 is now gone. It's beyond 5 years. Item number 23, the duration of blasting and material excavation shall allow rock-fill to be used in the infrastructure. And the infrastructure, as Ms. Duquesne will indicate, one of the things that I've had a lot of problems with is, as this 100 acres, as she indicated, it is a gargantuan piece of property. All the water is running down the hill, and you're now having water sediment. Steal my water. Water problems. Significant water problems into the wetlands. Yep. 5 minutes is up.
Yep.
I went as quick as I can. Give me 2 more minutes. I really do think that you need to hear these. October 26th, IWA permit is 5 years old. It's out, now out. It required hay bales. Hay bales throughout the entire construction process. None of the hay bales are up, and that's also part of your permit. And part of the planning and zoning permit is a whole series of silt and sedimentation controls. And I don't want to bore you with the specific numbers, you know they're there. The phase construction plan 1, 2, and 3 had a period of time. Fishback slope also had silt fabric and PVC perk pipe. None of that's present, none of that's on site. It's also part of the planning and zoning. The 2006 letters of compliance had a 50-foot clear cut. There's a giant cliff. There's no safety, no margin. There's approximately 215,000 cubic yards of material being hauled out of that property. You gave the landowner the opportunity to have that material withdrawn, and they've actually messed up by bringing new material in. The new material in has extended the process. It's created the traffic, the noise, the dust, and the devastation of the community with respect to that. And therefore, they shouldn't even be allowed. Ms. Duquesne says that they're waiting to take it someplace, yet they're using it on their property, and I provided her with pictures from the other day where the property is ground up and they're using it throughout the course of the property. And the pile of this gravel that we're talking about is big enough to bury this room, so it's not something that appeared. And I've provided both Ms. Duquesne and the town council, and I'd be happy to share with you photographs of both the Bing map and the Google Maps that show the before and after, where you can see almost to the raccoon level in the granularity of looking at the pictures to see that there was no material. Furthermore, as part of one of their original applications, they submitted a balloon photograph. We haven't been able to find that in the file, but they took pictures of the original site. One of the first things in all of the permit applications require you to take all of the icky bad stuff out of the property. And so if there really was, again, mind you, this mound is as big as this building, worth of stuff that was left there somehow miraculously. But more importantly is that one of the pictures that I provided is all the stumps and grubs were pushed into the wetlands, and then this new material, old material that was existing there somehow is on the inside, the construction side of that pile of grub and material into the wetlands. So they took all the trees and moved them around this pile and then put them in the wetlands, and then all of a sudden this new pile miraculously appeared. So you gave that permission to do the blasting and excavation. As I said earlier in one of my points, there's a period in time when in the earlier 2008 permit, you said that you could only do it. More importantly, one more thing. Additionally, the permit that was provided in the application is, Mr. Anderson here, you are? When you called me on the phone, you said you work for who?
Anderson Wilcox, HCA.
That's nice you say HCA. Anderson Wilcox Corp. does not exist. They were merged out of existence on January 6, 2011. Mr. Anderson has continued to use Anderson Wilcox in every single piece of paper and every single filing with the town for the last 3.5 years. And the important feature of that is that Anderson Wilcox Corp. does not exist. And because of that, every permit, every activity, all the stuff is like you were talking to Tinkerbell. It was merged, yes, very true, and I have copies of the Secretary of State, so there's no doubt about that, except for the fact is that he's continued to hold himself out as Anderson Wilcox Corporation. It's on every application, it's on every piece of paper, it's on every piece of correspondence, and when he called and talked to me on the telephone, he didn't add HCA Corporation. It's on none of the paperwork. Because of that, the state of Connecticut requires you to file a fictitious name statement with the town council, with the town clerk. There is no such fictitious name statement, and you can't have a fictitious name following with the word corporation in it. The violation of participating in business and doing business in the town of North Branford with an entity that is not registered with the Secretary of State is a violation of state statutes, and it actually gives rise to a misdemeanor that could conceivably actually put you in jail for a year. So I'd be happy to give you the citations. I'll talk to anything else that you'd like. But clearly, there are violations that exist, so there should be a cease and desist. As Mr. Sienna indicated, it's binary. Are there violations? Yes. Are there planning and zoning violations? Yes. Did they bring stuff in on site? Yes. So with all of those in mind, the simple solution is to actually issue a cease and desist, have an appeal to the Board of Appeals.
We only have 30 minutes left in tapes.
So needless to say, each one of those on an independent basis is sufficient to issue a cease and desist. I've got complaints from town that are in the work papers that you've talked about dust, you've talked about this stuff. The town hasn't done it. The planning and zoning has the opportunity to do the right thing, and I don't see how you don't. You'd set aside 2 weeks. We're not putting people out of business. We've made a ton of money taking the rocks, doing what it is that we're doing on this piece of property. Let's take a breath. As Ms. Duquesne says, yes, maybe we need to fix some things. One of the things that was supposed to be done all along was weekly monitoring, an independent soil scientist, an independent engineer, and have all of those reports in file from somebody that doesn't work for the company, and have all of that information provided to the Planning and Zoning Board. None of that exists. None of the permits are valid. None of them have followed. Lastly, as I indicated earlier, one of the things is this 5-year permit. The 5-year permit extension by the state required an application. It gave you the opportunity to extend the permits, but they actually had to apply. I have a letter and an article in the Connecticut Law Tribune. I have an article from the DEEP as well as the Connecticut Surveyors Association. So
Thank
it's
you.
very clear. Okay?
Our next item is a discussion yeah, I'm sorry. Give Mr. Anderson a chance.
I'm not going to debate the merits of right, wrong, or indifferent of what he said. What we'll do is we'll let, their counsel and our legal counsel figure out the legal aspects of it.
You're just talking to the mic, sorry, they just can't.
Can you hear a little better now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not going to debate the merits of what he said, right, wrong, or indifferent. If there's legal issues there, we'll let our counsel deal with it, his counsel and the town council, and figure that out. What we'll do is we could offer to hire an independent engineer, have them come to the site with our soil scientist and our engineer, assess the site, see what they see as violations or issues, which we don't believe, all of what is saying is accurate, but again, we're not going to debate that here. Let the engineers give us the program, what they want done, fixed, so it meets the application, and then we'll deal with whatever deficiencies exist on the site, and hopefully be back on track.
Okay, thank you.
My original question, do you actually?
Oh, and we believe actually the permit was initially, it's a registration, it's not with the DEP. We talked to our engineer today, and he believes he actually filed that in 2008 originally.
I have a letter from the state of Connecticut.
Well, this is what he told us today. I let you speak, you let me speak, all right?
Just don't lie.
I'm not lying. I'm telling you what my engineer told me, all right? So that's it. So we couldn't find the paper. We left. They file the paperwork. They fill out the applications. The engineer that was working for Nafis and Young retired. So we had thought possibly that maybe it slipped by the wayside and didn't get filed. It's a registration. You fill out the paperwork. You send the plan. You pay the $500 fee or whatever it is, and that's it. So going through their paperwork today, they told us that they feel that they filed that in 2008 as part of our, engagement of services with them. So if it's not filed, then we'll get it filed. And if it is filed, then we'll get it back to the commission, right away.
Thank you.
Fair enough?
Anything else?
Where do you stand on this, Carrie? Really?
So,
I mean,
I
it
would-
seems as though there's some validity to the complaints, and I know that there has been an issue with this before as far as, taking,
State of Connecticut.
Is to-
No applications, no permit, no nothing.
no,
End of story.
they
Shut
were
it down.
blasting stone, and nothing else really was getting done, except the stone was being blasted and was almost like a quarry. But, we never had a zoning enforcer agent, so, I mean, things just kept getting worse and worse. But right now, can he be allowed to continue until some of these things are straightened out?
So what I'm recommending is that we issue whatever the commission feels is best, a violation or a notice to cease and correct, because I do feel that it's very important to continue to try and correct the issues, because there's no vegetation really, percentage-wise, on the site. So there's erosion that has happened, there's silt fence around the perimeter of the work area, but in order to plan ahead and prepare for the spring and the rains and the mud and everything, I just want to make sure that the site is stable enough. Mr. Rowland has identified a lot of issues. We've met with him for numerous hours. I feel that the bullet points that I've identified are kind of the key sticking ones. I believe after looking through these that they have valid permits based on, I'm not sure about the whole corporation thing. That's something for the town attorney to answer. But the biggest issues are the state stormwater permit, the material brought on site, the erosion control issues, and so as a result,
with a
issue of a violation.
ceased and correct, what does that really mean?
Well, this is where I'd like to draft something, have John Jesman just even take a quick look at it to make sure that the town is, not that we're not in the right, but we're asking them to correct their violations, because the permits clearly outline what is allowed, and I've gone through all of the permits and identified areas where I see deficiencies and violations. So I think by citing each of those specifically, the permit number and the condition.
Yeah, and certainly it's a notice of violation, and then I'm going to go just the first one, the easy one, the DEP permit.
That's the one picture you need to see. That's the pile of bricks and rocks that's the size of this building.
They violated the conditions of the permit, so it's a notice of violation. Basically, stop work, cease and desist, and then correct your deficiencies. I agree with the.
That's the illegal debris brought on site, shown to.
Thank you for interrupting the town engineer.
Oh, please.
The town engineer has done absolutely nothing.
I can't imagine you would not stop this process. What's the question? I don't get it. Honestly.
Okay.
I think you should all take a ride down there. Walk the perimeter.
Okay, so we agree that there's big problems,
But
and what we want to know is
then it
what
would
we
be
can do.
stop, notice of violation, stop work, and then make the corrections.
It's not big problems.
Excuse me. As far as any material we brought on site, the concrete that's crushed was piles that were on the original site. There's no concrete or brick that was on there, and that pile was crushed and put in a pile. It was never used on site. It was piled. It was a pile to be taken away. And the one thing that Mr. Rowland said was correct. I think it would be important for the commission to go there, because the way the site looks, it's a pretty clean site. And if the town has any issues with the site,
There was no rocks in there. People went here for 25
we have
years.
jumped through hoops. The minute Carrie called, and I'm telling you, the minute she called, we addressed any issues that day or with the next day. Or at least we tried, Carrie. I mean, there's never been an issue that's out there. Is there stuff in erosion control that has to be addressed? Erosion control changes on a daily basis. We put measures in place that were not on the plan on a daily basis, and we will continue to do that on the site, because you have to. The site's large, we've taken numerous preemptive measures on site, and we continue.
I mean, right now, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's he said, she said.
100%.
You know, so the problem is here, how are we going to correct this?
What we're suggesting, Gary, is that we hire an outside consultant to go through the permit. We'll hire some outside, and we'll give you a report back. And if there's any issues that are out there, we'll address them.
Just for the record, that's a criteria in the very first permit. In the very first permit, there's supposed to be an external engineer hired and submit weekly reports back to the planning and zoning department.
Yeah.
From 2006.
Okay, but the
So I
thing
think
is,
the action item is, we issue a violation
Yeah, right.
clearly outlining the lack of a DEEP general permit registration, the material brought on site, we can cite the special use permit requirement to hire an outside person, and, you know, we can move forward.
Right.
But-
If there are a lot of violations.
the thing is, how long is this going to take? Is he going to continue?
I can tell you, Fran, I've been out there, like I say, at least once a week. Over the past 2 weeks, I've tried to get out there at least twice a week. The project manager, Dave Dupuy, has met me on site. We've walked the perimeter, we've walked the site. I'm not going to say, again, it's not perfect. There are issues, and there's constantly things that are popping up that I'm like, hey, what about that? And then the next day, it's addressed. I think
To anybody who's got a thing in their backyard.
When you were down there, you were in August or September, you first went down there, right? We had a problem with the blasting, you went down there?
Yes, Kurt and I went.
Were these bricks and piles of bricks there then?
September?
100%.
I don't
It was
see
the
that.
first pile that was crushed on site.
Where'd the bricks come from?
On site. The brick was, that was a dumping ground in the original zoning.
It's not going to,
No.
all this
Okay, wait a minute,
is
wait a
not
minute.
going to solve anything.
Why don't
It's
we-
what do we got to do from now on? And we cannot allow, you can't allow the business to just keep on doing and fixing maybe.
Okay, there is
You
a
know,
problem.
and-
We've identified the problem,
So
you've
have a-
identified the
have a
problem.
hearing.
And let me speak, please. I got to yell into this thing. Now, we need a timeline. Are there permits that we don't have that are needed? They have to be brought up to date, if they can be brought up to date. And I want a specific timeline. It's not something that we're going to look into.
Yeah, and again, it's a notice of violation, stop work, get things in order, then come back, you know, basically then come back to commission showing what's been done, a resolution. I mean, they've got to get to compliance.
Here's the special use permit from 2007, item number 10. The applicant shall clean and remove off-site any abandoned junk, debris, and existing on the site prior to commencement of any construction activity of the approved site plan. Item number 1, in the original site plan, take all the crap that you've got on your property before you haul out half, and by the way, it's 225,000 cubic yards of stone coming off that property. Before you take one rock off, you take all the bad Google bad stuff out of the property, the abandoned cars, all that kind of stuff, and special use permit. So none of that stuff should have been here before you took one truck of rock off the property. So we're not talking about minor violations. We're not talking about, oops, we made a mistake. Yes, it's very nice that when you get caught, that you finally all of a sudden become friendly with the zoning department and try to make amends. But they need, a cease and desist immediately to fix what's there, but to actually go in and do an assessment. You don't know what you don't know. There are dumping, I showed you the picture. The pile of that stuff is construction debris. Construction debris by North Branford regulations is pollution. The amount estimated to make that pile somewhere in this is somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,000 trucks of rocks and bricks and debris. I can show you pictures of plastic bags, of trash, of things that weren't on that property. In addition to that, I also have the letter that Kerry gave me Carrie gave me with respect to them purchasing leaves that aren't part of their soil amendment program. I have a copy of the soil sciences survey. I have a copy of the environmental report. They purchased leaves from the town of North Haven and brought them on site. It doesn't matter what they were going to do with them. They brought product onto the site. They drove their trucks through the town of North Branford. They inconvenienced your residents. They made a mess. They've made their neighbors mess. They've got dust. There's lots of problems. It's not a minor insignificant. You have the authority to shut it down. Let them come for the Board of Zoning Appeals and have an appeal in 2 weeks. You give them a notice of violation. They can do whatever they want. They can say, look, we didn't do it. Here's the photographs. I'll go get you the GPS satellite that shows there was nothing on site in 2011, and we go.
Special use permits is before they start construction, right?
Correct.
They haven't started construction.
That's correct.
No, it says before you do anything.
You said construction.
The applicant shall, construction activity of any site, including the site plan, any of the site plan, includes all of the driveways, travel, the grading, all the individual site plans require, each of the individual permits require all the removal.
Before they start construction. They haven't started construction.
They have started construction. They
They're still
started
clearing.
phase 1 of construction. They're not clearing anymore.
Are they still brush and rock?
They haven't started, there's no billings, it's construction though, because
Yeah,
they're
but
removing
this-
material
but-
off-site.
Yeah,
They're
but
doing
this
work
is,
on site.
but this has been going on for at least 5 years,
Well,
that
I
we're
mean, it
still crushing stone there, and nothing really has been done.
Well, I mean,
So,
there was a, without going into all detail, there was a couple steps, they came in and to take material off-site and preparation of the site. Those are the two more recent approvals. That's when they started in 2012.
well,
And the whole thing.
I think that we should have a cease and correct.
Okay, I mean, and that's what,
You know, in other
Okay,
words, they can't do another thing until they correct all these problems.
again, in terms of, the first thought was to get the site buttoned up before the winter,
Yeah, but it-
and then look at everything,
But
and then.
this has been
then
going
there's a follow-up.
on for a lot of years, and we've had this issue of them crushing stone before, and it was always, well, it's in preparation. Well, now it looks like, I mean, they're making a lot of money out of crushing stone, and nothing's being done with the
Well,
land.
the taking, I don't want
This is all
to drag
site
out. Taking the stone off the site was part of the more recent approval, some of the material. But yes, I mean, as Carrie said, she's identified as the major items at this point in terms of then there's notice of violation, stop work, and then requirement to get everything in order. I mean,
This
that's-
is all part of the original site plan approval. There's nothing, other than, this is all the original plan. And we just started, we came before you, we did this in 2 phases, if you recall. We came with the first phase. We moved about 60,000 yards of material off. Okay, a couple issues with trucks here and there. Nobody came, no issues, right? That was a year and a half, 2 years ago. Now, you know, we're going to this second phase. We get the first complaints this summer on the blasting. That's when that first happened. With the commission, all right, that was the first time.
But the first
We
phase
addressed-
hasn't been done, but you started the second phase, is
First
that
phase
it?
was done. We did all the earthworks and
And it's
excavation.
ready now to start
No,
building?
remember, we explained to you at the meetings, the process.
Phase
of how-
construction
how we're
plan,
gonna-
pre-construction. All of the site work in the wetlands, the site should be kept clean.
Listen, we came in front of you people and went through the whole process, all right? We're not going to redo this tonight. It's not the forum for it. If we have issues on site, we're going to correct them. Simple. That's what they
Well,
want.
that's what you're gonna
That's
have
what
to
we're
do.
gonna
You're gonna
And
have
we've
to-
always committed to doing that.
As far as,
And we have never.
I think it should,
Commission.
nothing should be done until everything is corrected, because this has been going on too long.
And I'd like to see a timeline.
Yep.
I mean, yes, we're going to do it.
Well, they
You know,
can't do anything until they clean it up, so
Right.
they can take a month, or they could take a year. In the meantime, they're not going forward.
First, you have to confirm that they are not compliant.
Exactly. Well, actually, I have a letter, it's strangely enough, it's from Cherry Hill. Cherry Hill has no permits, they actually have no standing in any of this.
Somebody
But
from the
Mr.
town has to
Dupuy-
go to the site and decide if they're in conformity or
But
not.
Mr. Dupuy, who actually works for Cherry Hill, has responded that they brought these in, and the Department of Public Works for the town of North Haven has agreed and certified that they sold leads to Cherry Hill Construction. And so that, by its very nature, in addition to the letter that's provided by the state of Connecticut Department of DEP, you're in violation because If you don't have the permit, it's one of your requirements, you're in violation because you brought product on site, period. So, I mean, that part's easy. If you'd like to address any of the other 20 items that I have on my list, I'll give you a few more that are relatively easy. I mean, Kurt and Kerry can do them with the board tomorrow. You can do a walkthrough. You can do an emergency pass. You can do whatever you'd like. But any of those all
That's all the
qualify.
enforcement officers.
Right. That's
It's
what I'm
not the
saying.
commission.
Right. But the commission has the authority to actually issue a cease and desist. It also has the authority to direct the enforcement officer to do it.
Which is what we just talked about.
Right.
Okay. So just to clarify, cease and correct that will require a timeline of obtaining permits and a timeline to remove material offsite and a timeline to correct any other outstanding violations or issues.
Well, the timeline for getting his permits shouldn't be more than a couple of weeks, I would think. The timeline to correct some of the others maybe take a month.
Sure.
But in the meantime, nothing can be done except correcting the problems.
Did the original site development plan include a sewer link that's been removed?
No, it hasn't been removed. That's not accurate at all. There's still been discussion about the design of it. And that was something that Kurt discussed in the commission.
There's an approval for the sanitary, talk about the sanitary sewer? Yeah, there's an approval for the sanitary sewer connection. There had been a request to, it was very deep to a site, either to reconsider the depth or get some funding assistance from the town on that. That's still sort of an open thing.
The requirement that there be a sewer connection prior to any construction that was removed by the planning and zoning in 2012 is
that was out of, I believe, Carol, it wasn't in the, I think there was an exemption on the 2012 site plan application or permits for the removal of material that was excluded from those two phases.
But the original permit did say that before.
That's absolutely correct. That's absolutely correct.
But then one of the applications
The
called it
subsequent
out and removed it.
applications, the approvals exempted that from those two phases, the steps.
Well, I mean, they had a legitimate complaint, you know, that property was an eyesore when they bought it.
So, thank you. I'm clear.
Okay.
Ceased and correct. Ceased and correct.
And add the permits too.
Well, that's all part of it.
Well, on the permits, what we're doing is confirming them there, and you guys have the permits. I mean, there's...
Then show them to Carrie.
No, Carrie, correct, all the local permits, as far as we're both on the same page, we think we have everything.
You know,
guys-
everything that's been brought up, that Carrie knows about with this gentleman and with you, you know, it has to be corrected. Whether you have the permits, you know, or not is irrelevant to me.
Listen, it's important to us, and I think Carrie agrees that, and Kurt, we're all on the same page, that we have everything that we need at this point.
In my review of this, and I'm trying to understand how everything was filed and whether the former town planner had a different way of doing it, whatever. It's my understanding and my read of this that the current site development plan that was approved in 2012 is actually good until September of 2017, because it's based on the original approval, which was in 2008, and per the Connecticut General Statutes, it was actually extended because there was that dip in the economy, and so it automatically extended site plan approvals.
That site plan approval came through us.
Yes. And the site plan approval, if you look at it, the permit number is 2008-09-03. And that number carried throughout the years, all the way through the most current approval, which was December 2nd of 2012. So that's just how it was done. I don't have a better explanation than that.
Quick question or point of order. I asked you today specifically for a site plan application, and you said that there were none before 2008 or 10 or 12, that there was no separate application with a payment of the fee. And I'd like to read to you the section of the original special use permit that says, individual site development plan application shall be required for each construction phase, starting with the first site plan submittal being called phase 1. And each site plan shall indicate in detail. So I asked you today if you had any other site plan applications, and you said, no, we just did it administratively. However, the individual site plan development is required under 62.6.2. Not only is it required to be in writing, and the reason that a site plan is required to be in writing is because there's 65-day requirements. You have to act on it, you have to vote, you have to actually do something. So in the absence of an application for the site plan in 2012, there is no site plan.
Again, Mr. Rowland, I can't tell you
I'm
how
just saying.
the former town planner handled this. I was, I'm not
But
sure.
there would be an application. It
Right,
would
and
be
all I
in the
can-
minutes. It
all I
would be on the board.
all
There
I-
is no permit.
All I can say is that it was listed as a separate item on each of the agendas. So it was on the agenda.
You do not have it in your file. You don't, it wasn't acted on, it wasn't voted, it wasn't minuted. So all I'm getting at is there's a whole host of stuff.
I have the meeting minutes from each of those meetings where it was discussed and voted on.
But an
So I don't-
application is a written formal document, and it happened 2 or 3 times. I'll bring you the information tomorrow and we'll provide it to Attorney Gismondi. But there are a whole series of things. The Connecticut statute only extended the opportunity to have those credits. I mean, to have the permits extended. It did not extend the permit. It extended the opportunity to apply. And I happen to have that citation for you. And I'd be.
Okay, maybe you could drop it off.
Yep.
I don't know if the board has any other questions.
No, you got anything? Should we pull the plug?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I think that you have all your problems listed, all your...
Oh, actually, I spent enough time at the council's office this morning to make copies of everything, to make sure that I had ticked and tied. An example, asked for applications for the copies of the various applications.
I think that we should have a copy of all these complaints and be able to talk to Carrie about how many are really been done, how many aren't been done. Because as far as the board's concerned, if anybody comes before us with a site plan, we have to assume that, all the preliminary work was done. And it may,
You have other...
some of this stuff may even
You have all the
involve...
stuff. No, I mean, but if you
I
have...
got a list about how the permits actually.
All right, and I'm just saying, because we do
That's
have...
administrative, we can deal with that.
We do have a lot of stuff.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Somebody want to make a motion?
Is there anything else? We've approved the minutes?
Sean's, we're gonna continue it to the next meeting.
Which with Sean's, anything?
Just the specific,
The elimination of, if you remember, there was the old farm...
oh. For Sean's?
I'm not for the land.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
But for the bridge, the old farm bridge, originally
Right.
that was a condition to be left in and remain on that open space parcel. Basically, the developer has been trying to work with the land trust or get somebody to take it. The land trust is the obvious one to take the open space. It's the right group to take it.
yeah.
They don't want to take it with the bridge
Right,
because it's
so
a liability. They want to take it
Did
out.
the developer say he was going to put
The
a new
developer will
bridge
do
in?
it. We just have to get we'll get a formal motion written up for the next one. We just
let's
haven't
do
done
it
it
then.
yet.
Yeah,
But
that's all.
I think everybody's in agreement it should go out. Well, yeah, and wetlands has to formally act too, but
Have
everybody's
you
in
got a
agreement.
motion drawn up, or,
No, I'll have a motion next time. It was,
well, can't we just do it now?
going to remove the bridge.
Well, you just want to make, to be honest with you, because it has to tie in have to make sure we just get it worded right so it ties in
Right.
to the old
So-
subdivision
Right.
approval.
What I have a subdivision approval from 2008-2009-10. So I believe that this is the only one that we would have to amend, and it just talks specifically about keeping the existing bridge and having it be certified by the state of Connecticut
Right.
to be structurally sound for pedestrian
Right,
access.
right.
The question, the motion that I just need to drop is, do we just strike that?
We just want to make sure that whatever.
All right,
You
so
know,
we
that's
can't
why-
really
I
do it
know,
now
sorry,
to make sure
yeah.
that this is,
Time-wise,
I didn't expect anyone from the land trust or.
if I know you're there for that, I would, but time-wise, the developer's okay, I know the land trust, I mean, it's not
Yeah.
holding up anybody at this point.
okay. So
except Scott.
everything, I mean, as far as we're
Sorry.
concerned, it's all go. It's just a matter of legality to get it written out, and I guess they have to write it right so we don't face any problems later.
They were a wetlands commission.
Right.
Yeah, well, they don't have, they're gonna take action, they've agreed to do it.
The only other item I just wanted to mention to everyone is at the town council meeting on January 20th, there's going to be a presentation by the consultants who did the drawing for 1599 Foxton Road. So the town manager asked that I just extend the invitation to the planning and zoning commissioners.
1599 Foxton Road.
So that's the parcel where the
Town hall.
old town hall was
Oh,
and the
okay.
community center.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I'll send an email as well. That's all. Okay. Sorry. Presenting that to the town council. And then here's just correspondence that I received. I just lost this down. That's all. I received this regarding the propane.
Oh, gosh. More propane.
Somebody care to make a motion?
This is just
Anything else,
correspondence
Carrie?
That's all. Thank
Okay, I
you
make a
so
motion that
much.
the meeting be adjourned.
Second. Aye.